Chapter 1545. There was no doubt that in terms of strength alone, Noah was stronger than Maxwell by more than one level. However, Maxwell, who had the third perpetual motion machine, was too difficult to deal with. Not only did he have the ability to jump through space and intervene in any battle at any time, he could also leave the battle at any time. His ability was quite superb. Even if he was hit, he could resurrect infinitely and would not die. In this way, even if Noah could firmly suppress Maxwell, he could not do anything to Maxwell. Galgi said that if he wanted to kill Maxwell, there were only 3 options at present. 1. Start with Maxwell's spirit. Maxwell's immortal body existed because of the third perpetual motion machine spirit, and it could not be defeated unless a countermeasure was formulated against the third perpetual motion machine. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible to defeat this demon. However, how could a countermeasure against the third perpetual motion machine be thought of in a short time? What's more, Maxwell's third perpetual motion machine was spirit, and Noah's treasure vault did not have any weapons against spirit. If the warrior could use it, then there would be no problem, but now that the warrior could not be used, Noah could not use this plan. 2. Start the bestowal game on Maxwell. In the box court, the bestowal game was all the laws and regulations. If Maxwell could be involved in the bestowal game, and then the condition of, the loser dies, was written into the game, and through the game, Maxwell could be defeated. Under the rules of the box court, even if Maxwell's immortality was 10 times stronger, he could only die. However, Noah did not have the authority of the organizer, and could not start the bestowal game without the opponent's consent. And even if one thought with their knees, they could understand that Maxwell would never risk his life and agree to participate in Noah's game. Therefore, this plan could not be used. 3. Eliminate Maxwell and the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine with absolute power. According to Galgi, to do this, one had to have at least 3 digits of power above the box court to attack. For example, another cosmology. Unfortunately, Noah's another cosmology was not an attack type at all. Although it could overcome all the differences in strength when facing the gods and the celestials and seal the 2 most powerful species, when facing other opponents, it could only exert the effect of having the spiritual lattice. Even if the spiritual capacity of Maxwell's third perpetual motion machine was reduced by half, the function of the third perpetual motion machine, which could generate energy out of nothing, would not disappear. If that was the case, Maxwell would still be able to continuously regenerate and recover. It would not help at all. As a result, none of the 3 plans could be used. Apart from the above 3 plans, there was basically no way to defeat the third perpetual motion machine. Of course, just because he couldn't defeat them didn't mean that he couldn't seal them either. Looks like I have no choice but to seal this stalker. After making up his mind, Noah immediately raised his head and looked at the sky. There, Maxwell appeared from the spiraling flames and ice. He stared at Noah with an extremely dark gaze. Damn it, Noah thought that it was too difficult to deal with Maxwell, but how could Maxwell not think that it was too difficult to deal with Noah? Even Az Dakaha, a 3-digit demon king, could not deal with Noah, so what could Maxwell, a 4-digit demon king, do to Noah? At best, Maxwell relied on the spiritual lattice of the third perpetual motion machine to save his life. In the hands of Noah, Maxwell would definitely not be able to get away with it. This fact made Maxwell extremely angry, but it was of no use. After a while, Maxwell took a deep breath and suddenly laughed. I'm really confused, why am I entangled with you here? This sentence, unsurprisingly, made Noah stunned. Immediately after, Maxwell muttered to himself as if he was talking to himself. Although not being able to deal with a hateful person is indeed unsatisfying, I came here to pick up my beautiful bride. For my Vera, everything else is not important. Hearing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, but his heart was shocked. Could it be that Maxwell was preparing to leave the battle and go straight for Vera? Sure enough, in the next moment, Maxwell seemed to be infatuated as he shouted in an extremely intoxicated manner. That's right. I only have my Vera in my heart. Vera. Wait for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Maxwell's figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. Don't even think about it. Noah stretched out his hand without hesitation. A wave-like golden ripple appeared in the air. From within, a scroll made of parchment flew out and landed in Noah's hand. It burned and turned into ashes. On the other side, the legions of the community stationed in the vampire castle were fiercely fighting against the two-headed dragon army formed by Az Dakaha's doppelgangers. However, at a certain moment, in the center of the battlefield, an unimaginable scene suddenly appeared. Summon. Fool's calamity fire. Amidst a cute shout, a pale flame suddenly rose from the center of the battlefield, releasing an unimaginable amount of heat. It roasted the atmosphere and turned into a pillar of fire that rushed into the sky. The pale flame pillar rubbed against the air, and even the air was completely evaporated. It directly extended to the curtains of the courtyard. Thus, the scorching firestorm scattered the sea of clouds in the sky. It continued to revolve, incinerating the two-headed dragons into nothingness. At this moment, on the battlefield, everyone was dumbstruck as they looked at the pillar of flame that rushed into the clouds and released a terrifying amount of heat. Their faces were filled with shock. Under such circumstances, Vera stood at the center of the pillar of flame. She raised her small hand high and continuously released surging pale flames. Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, Pest, and the others who were bravely fighting on the battlefield also looked at the pillar of flame that rose into the clouds and incinerated the two-headed dragons into nothingness. For a moment, they were shocked. How powerful, that? Is that the power of the Northern District's strongest demon? Evidently, no one expected that little girl who appeared harmless and easily aroused one's desire to protect would actually possess this level of power. The pale flames that Vera used were no ordinary flames. That was the karmic fire that was directly summoned from the underworld. Vera was a great demon that could freely travel between the realms of life and death. As for the realms of life and death, they naturally referred to the underworld and the underworld. At this moment, Vera was controlling the power of the realms of life and death. She had connected herself with the underworld and summoned the karmic fire from the underworld. That was a flame that only required a single lamp to burn down an entire street. Vera unleashed her power, causing the underworld's furnace to collapse and the realms of this world to burn the entire battlefield. Seeing the two-headed dragons being incinerated by the pale flames of hell, the people present finally experienced the power of the Northern District's strongest demon. Vera's power was most definitely comparable to that of deities, or even surpassing them. This also meant that Vera was at least a 5-digit, or even a 4-digit existence. With such an existence, among the people present, except for the 4-digit Letitia and the Queen's Knight, there was probably no one who could contend against her. However, such an existence could do nothing to Maxwell. Vera, who was continuously summoning the pale flames, suddenly widened her eyes and disappeared from her original position. Almost at the same time, a figure flashed in Vera's original position and pounced on empty air. The pillar of pale flames that shot straight into the sky was suddenly extinguished. Vera appeared from another position and exclaimed in surprise when she saw the figure standing in front of her. "Why are you here?" The person who came was naturally Maxwell. "Vera, my most beloved bride." Maxwell ignored Vera's question and stared at her with a scorching gaze. He spoke as if he was intoxicated. "Come, I'll take you away from here now." "No." Vera rejected without hesitation. Unfortunately, Maxwell did not care about Vera's rejection. With a space leap, he appeared in front of Vera and opened his arms in her direction. "Come with me." Before he could finish his sentence, another voice sounded. "Dream on." A faint light bloomed in front of Vera. Within the faint light, Noah's figure appeared, turned into a bullet, and flew in front of Maxwell. Hugh dash. A fist carrying a strong gust of wind roared towards Maxwell. Maxwell's expression cleared and instantly disappeared from his original position, causing the fist to land on empty air. Looking at Noah in front of Vera, Maxwell's expression became a little twisted. "Are you going to stop me from reuniting with Vera no matter what?" Hearing Maxwell's words, Noah's eyes were cold. "Are you going to get Vera no matter what?" Maxwell answered without hesitation. "Isn't that obvious?" Is that so? Noah closed his eyes and then suddenly opened them. Unfortunately, you will never be able to do it. After that, Noah suddenly turned around and hugged Vera. Huh? Vera did not react at all. By the time Vera reacted, Noah's face had suddenly enlarged in her eyes. Then, he captured Vera's lips. Chapter 1546. For a moment, Vera didn't understand what was going on at all. She could only stare blankly at the face so close to her, her mind completely blank. It wasn't until her lips were pried open and the tip of her tongue was captured, entangling with another tongue, that Vera finally realized what was going on. As expected, Vera's pretty face turned red. Even her delicate body tensed up, and her eyes trembled violently. She subconsciously reached out her hand and pushed against Noah's chest with all her might. However, Noah was like an unshakable iron tower. His body wasn't affected by Vera's push at all. One of his hands hugged Vera's slender waist, while the other caressed Vera's head. Then, following the strands of her hair, he gently stroked Vera's back. That unexpectedly gentle action, as well as the complete opposite of his actions, was extremely domineering as he captured her tongue. The continuous intertwining of his tongue made Vera feel as though an electric current was running from the soles of her feet to her brain, causing her to feel numb. This feeling made Vera's beautiful face redder and redder. Her violently trembling eyes also became moist and moist. Thus, Vera's hand that was pushing Noah's chest gradually weakened. Her delicate body was still trembling slightly, and she couldn't help but close her eyes. She was extremely passive as Noah continued to entangle her. The sudden appearance of the pink scene made Maxwell's expression turn sluggish. His eyes seemed to have lost focus and gradually enlarged. He was completely stunned on the spot. Ignoring Maxwell's performance, Noah wantonly tasted the sweet lips and tongue of the girl in his arms. He continued to caress Vera's back while the hand that was hugging Vera's slender waist became tighter and tighter. Vera's beautiful figure was pulled into his embrace. Suddenly, Vera's ample bosom, which he had felt up close before, pressed against Noah's chest. Noah's heart couldn't help but be slightly moved, and he kissed even more passionately. At this moment, it was as though time had stopped in the entire world. Only Noah and Vera were left in this space, hugging and kissing each other. Disregarding Noah, who was concentrating on enjoying the girl's fragrance, Vera was driven by an inconceivable pleasure that she had never felt before. She could only passively accept Noah's invasion. As a result, this kiss lasted for a full 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, Noah seemed to be satisfied and released the girl's lips in his arms. Ha! Ha! Vera immediately became breathless as though she had done some intense exercise. She had never experienced something like this before, so Vera's eyes seemed to be unfocused. She panted slightly while gazing at Noah in a daze. She didn't react for a long time. When his eyes met Vera's dazed gaze, Noah felt pity and domineeringly embraced Vera as he declared, "Don't worry, Vera, I will never hand you over to that stalker." His words were like a pledge of eternal love. Vera, who was experiencing a kiss for the first time, felt her heartbeat quicken. She lowered her head with a red face and a shy look. Ah! Maxwell absent-mindedly looked at Vera, who was in Noah's embrace and had her head lowered shyly. His body trembled as he walked forward step by step with difficulty. He reached out his hand towards Vera's direction. Vera! Vera, seeing Maxwell's appearance as if he had lost his mind, Vera's delicate body tensed up, and she buried her head in Noah's arms as if she was afraid. This performance made Maxwell's footsteps stagnate. His trembling body stiffened, and his unfocused eyes scattered, leaving only the whites of his eyes filled with blood vessels. At this moment, Noah clearly felt it. The atmosphere surrounding Maxwell's body suddenly changed and became lifeless. Bang! With the lifeless Maxwell as the center, a burst of violent flames and ice suddenly exploded, turning into waves of flames and cold currents that spread in all directions. The storm of alternating cold and heat that was continuously released in an extreme manner caused the plasma to flow in all directions in the atmosphere, shattering the realm. The space was like a piece of glass, shattering little by little. Then, two figures slowly appeared in the shattered space, bringing with them a blazing flame and a cold wind. Seeing the two figures, Vera revealed a shocked expression. Not only Vera, but even Noah was a little surprised. They were two monsters with huge wings on their backs. The monsters had skin made of steel. Their appearance did not match any of the creatures in Noah and Vera's memories. Rather than calling them living beings, it was better to call them robots made of inorganic matter. However, on their bodies, the skin made of steel seemed to be pulsing up and down, as if there was blood flowing underneath. It was extremely strange. The two monsters spread their wings, holding a sharp sword and a sharp spear in their hands, and slowly floated out of the shattered space. That's... Vera said with some uncertainty. Angels? That's right. At first glance, the figure was simply like an angel descending from heaven. However, the strange appearance and the undulations under the skin made of steel did not have the slightest sense of holiness, but rather an ugly feeling. That feeling made Vera tremble a little. As for Maxwell, who was behind the two steel angels, he was like a broken puppet. His arms and head hung down, and even his upper body hung down. His entire body became wobbly. The incomparably strange atmosphere suddenly became even stranger with Maxwell's death. In the next second, a pure white light bloomed from Maxwell's body like a cocoon, enveloping his whole body and wrapping him in it. At the same time, the two steel angels raised their heads and the weapons in their hands. Noah's heart suddenly felt a sense of danger. At that moment, without any hesitation, Noah turned around and hugged Vera, protecting the completely unresponsive Vera in his arms. Buzz! Accompanied by the sound of space trembling, the two steel angels suddenly disappeared on the spot. When they reappeared, they were already behind Noah. The two steel angels could also use space jump. The two steel swords swung down from the hands of the steel angels at the same time, causing a sharp sound of breaking through the air, cutting through the atmosphere, and heavily striking Noah's back. Clang! Another neat sound rang out. Amidst the ringing of a bell, the two steel greatswords were bounced back by Noah's body, who possessed the sovereignty of the Leo constellation and the gift of invulnerability. However, at the same time, Noah felt an extremely heavy force from the two steel swords that struck down. That force was not inferior to the full blow of people with extraordinary physical abilities such as Noah, 16 Knights, and Galgi. If it weren't for the LV-6 durability that dissolved this force, the sword protection that weakened the physical attack to a certain extent, the development ability of swordsman that weakened the attack power of sword-type weapons, and the sovereignty of the Leo constellation that bounced off most of the force, Noah would have been directly smashed away by the heavy blow of the two steel angels. But even so, Noah still couldn't help but groan, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Who? The next moment, Noah hugged Vera, turned around, and kicked out a powerful kick on the chests of the two steel angels. Bang! In the sound of metal bursting, the chests of the two steel angels were heavily smashed by Noah's kick, and they fell apart in midair. However, the two steel angels that fell apart suddenly stopped in midair, turned into a mist, condensed together, and returned to their original state in an instant. What? Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Space jump. Immortal body. These two steel angels actually had the same ability as Maxwell. Chapter 1547. The blurry shadow tore through the obstacles in the air with a faint sound, wiping out the distance of hundreds of meters in less than a second. It shuttled through space and appeared in front of the two steel angels. Who? A fist carrying a vigorous wind blasted out and smashed into the abdomens of the two steel angels. The steel angels obviously didn't have any intelligence and could only rely on their instincts to fight. They only reacted when the fist was about to reach them and raised the weapons in their hands. Clang! The fist carrying a terrifying power immediately landed heavily on the weapons of the two steel angels, causing a crisp sound of metal clashing. A circle of shockwaves shook the ground, causing cracks to appear on the ground and spreading out. The two steel angels were directly smashed back by the heavy fist. They flew back like cannonballs due to the friction in the air. A pair of wings flapped wildly, and it wasn't until they retreated for a long distance that they resolved the force and stabilized their bodies. At this moment, two spears pierced through the sky like two bright streamers. They flashed through space and caught up with the two steel angels in an instant, landing on their bodies. Bang! Accompanied by a neat muffled explosion, the two steel angels were directly smashed into pieces by the two spears. They scattered into a pile of steel fragments and scattered in the air. However, the steel fragments that scattered in the air suddenly stagnated and turned into a mist. They gathered together and transformed into the two steel angels again. Are they really immortal? Noah slowly withdrew his fist, and his eyes flickered. That. Vera stood to the side, seemingly not knowing whether to help or not. It's okay, just stay there obediently. Noah seemed to have seen through Vera's thoughts and said directly. Leave it to me. But. Vera said hesitantly. Those angels seem to be like Maxwell. They can't be killed. No, only Maxwell is truly immortal. After all, it's the third perpetual motion machine. It itself symbolizes eternity. If it could be killed so easily, then it wouldn't be the dream crystallization of the entire human future science. Noah narrowed his eyes. But because of this, I don't believe that the third perpetual motion machine can be used on two angel dolls. The immortality of those angels is definitely not as strong as Maxwell's. Is that so? Vera tilted her head. Then, can you get rid of them? No problem. Noah said faintly. Although I need to use some real power. After saying that, Noah closed his eyes and softly chanted. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000, 1,000, 10,000, and 10,000. Now, for me who stands on the side of justice, give me divine power. In the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate that symbolized the authority of the 10 incarnations finally trembled. It suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the thunder. Swoosh! Almost at the same time, the two steel angels used space jump at the same time and appeared in front of Noah. The steel greatswords in their hands suddenly swung down and slashed at Noah's head. In response, Noah didn't even open his eyes. He only raised one hand. Boom! A burst of violent lightning suddenly appeared around the two steel angels. It turned into a spherical lightning cage and wrapped the two steel angels inside. Beep, beep, beep. Amidst the chaotic sound of electric shocks, thick bolts of lightning moved back and forth on the two steel angels' bodies, causing the two steel angels' bodies to tremble violently. Immediately, under the direct attack of the powerful lightning, the steel skin on the two steel angels' bodies was electrolyzed one by one, shattered, and annihilated. In the end, they completely disappeared in the two lightning cages. This time, the fog didn't appear again. The two steel angels disappeared in the violent lightning, as if they didn't exist in the first place. They completely disappeared without a trace. The steel angels weren't ordinary mechanical dolls. With physical strength comparable to Noah, 16 knights, and Galgi, it meant that the bodies of these angels were at least at the level of gods. Coupled with space jump and regeneration ability, the abilities of the steel angels were estimated to be on par with the first generation of Azidakaha's body. Unfortunately, these two god-level angels were so easily destroyed by Noah's hands. This made Vera couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Sure enough, as Noah said, the third perpetual motion machine's spiritual core was at best owned by Maxwell. It was impossible for some puppet-like steel angels to have it. However, just as Vera was relieved, she suddenly tensed up again in the next second. Wang! In front of her, in the space covered by the pure white light like a cocoon, there was a trembling sound. In the trembling sound, steel angels holding sharp swords and pointed spears appeared one after another from the space. They flapped the wings on their back and slowly floated out of the light. In the blink of an eye, there were more than a dozen such steel angels. And those dozen steel angels were all at the level of gods. Liar! Vera murmured in disbelief. Even Noah frowned tightly, as if he understood something, and smacked his lips. So that's how it is. Is there a group of gods backing him? Those god-level angels were definitely not something that Maxwell could create. Then, there was no doubt that it was the group of gods controlling the Demon King Alliance behind the scenes to provide combat power to Maxwell. If they allowed Maxwell to continue summoning like this, perhaps Maxwell could really create an entire army of deities. At that time, it was likely that Maxwell's threat would really be able to rival Aziz Dakaha. Realizing this, Noah clenched his fists, and the divine power and the energy source in his body was like a surging current, instantly flowing through his whole body. I will use these words to provoke the gods in heaven, exercise this magic, chant this incantation, and make everything in the world bow and kneel. In the depths of his heart, the stone plate that was originally pointing in the direction of thunder suddenly turned and pointed at priest. Not knowing if it was because they felt a threat from Noah at this moment, the dozen steel angels suddenly became restless. In the next moment, those steel angels suddenly disappeared in place. Like phantoms, they appeared around Noah without any warning and rushed in from all directions. Sharp steel swords were raised high by the steel angels surrounding Noah. It was believed that in a second, those weapons that could easily split rocks would mercilessly fall on Noah's body. Be careful. Vera softly called out. However, the person in question, Noah, acted as if he didn't see anything and whispered. Stop. His understated words, like a spring breeze, turned into an invisible force that fluctuated in all directions. The steel angels that were swept by the invisible force like ripples became sluggish, as if they were entangled by an invisible spider web, and could no longer move in the slightest. Ignoring the steel angels, Noah stretched out a hand and wrote a mysterious rune in the air. Clang! One rune after another flashed in the air, emitting a bright light, and turned into a stream of light that flew toward the unknown source of light like a cocoon. In the blink of an eye, the runes surrounded the unknown source of light like a cocoon, forming the shape of a sphere made of mysterious characters. Noah opened his eyes, and with a "pa" sound, he put his palms together. Seal. The runes suddenly blossomed with a strong light, turning into a crystal sphere with runes engraved on its surface. It enveloped the unknown source of light and slowly shrunk. Ah! From the unknown source of light, Maxwell's roar resounded. Chapter 1548. Hum 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 hum. The surface of the crystal barrier engraved with mysterious runes was continuously compressed in a spherical shape, causing the unknown light source to tremble violently. Ah! Maxwell's roars continued to resound from the trembling unknown light source. His voice was filled with intense madness, like a wild beast that was trapped in a cage and was desperately struggling to break free. He kept howling. Hearing the bone-chilling roars, Vera couldn't help but take a small step back. Noah, on the other hand, kept his palms together and muttered to himself sarcastically. It seems that you have lost your mind. Then stay like this and never wake up. After saying that, Noah extracted the divine power from the divine power source in his body and turned the surging divine power into a golden wave that burst out from his body. Thus, with the support of abundant divine power, the mysterious runes engraved on the surface of the crystalline barrier suddenly flashed with an even more intense radiance. The trembling of the unknown source of light slightly pushed the spherical crystal barrier apart and did its best to compress it. Hum 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 hum. The squeezed unknown light source trembled even more violently. Ah! Maxwell's crazy roars also became more violent. That sound was like a wild animal that was about to be slaughtered, full of despair and pain. However, as the crystalline barrier engraved with mysterious runes continued to shrink, Maxwell's frenzied roars became weaker and weaker. The tremors of the unknown light source also became fainter and fainter. When the translucent barrier turned into a palm-sized jade, the mysterious runes on its surface also shrunk to the size of a mosquito. Whether it was the trembling of the unknown light source or Maxwell's roar, they all disappeared. Phew. Noah exhaled deeply and stretched out a hand in the direction of the jade. The jade floating in mid-air immediately trembled as if it was being pulled by an invisible hand. It flew through the air and landed in Noah's hand. The seal is complete. Noah held the precious jade in his hand tightly and smiled. He then lifted his head and looked at the steel angels who were frozen in space by the spirit of words. The smile on his face gradually turned icy cold. Translator's note: Toby is a Chinese idiom. As for you all, there is no need for you to continue existing. The stone plate that was pointing at the priest began to rotate again, pointing back in the direction of the thunder. Beep, beep, beep. Rings of resplendent lightning burst out around the steel angels. Just like before, they turned into ball-shaped lightning cages that enveloped them, causing the violent lightning to crazily scurry around those steel angels. There was no suspense. Under the continuous strikes of the scorching lightning bolts, the steel surface of the angels began to crumble and disintegrate. In the end, they completely disappeared from this space like evaporating air. Seeing Noah instantly dispose of more than a dozen divine-level steel angels and completely seal Maxwell, who had been pestering her for so long, Vera's expression was a little absent-minded. Although she was quite innocent, it did not mean that Vera really did not understand anything. At least, Vera now believed. She believed that Noah definitely had the ability to contend with 3 digits of the Demon King, who was known as the final human trial, Az Dakaha. Noah did not know if he felt Vera's gaze, but he turned around and looked at Vera. What's wrong? Noah raised the precious jade in his hand. Could it be that you want this? Upon hearing this, Vera's entire body quivered. Without any hesitation, he shook his head like a rattle drum. Vera wanted to stay as far away from Maxwell as possible. Furthermore, it was the kind that was as far away as possible. Even if Maxwell was now sealed by Noah, it was the same. Noah naturally knew what Vera was thinking, and he could not help but smile meaningfully. You don't want it, but maybe someone else wants it very much. This sentence made Vera feel a little strange. However, Noah did not explain. He stretched out his empty hand and took out a bag from a sudden golden ripple, and put the precious jade in his hand in it. Seeing this, Vera curiously asked, "What is that?" "A small tool," Noah answered. "With this, unless there are special circumstances, this item will not be lost." In the game Yggdrasil, there were skills and tools that could steal items from the player's inventory. Therefore, in the game, there were also anti-theft methods. The bag Noah was using now was one of them. If the item was put in, then no matter how high the level of skills or tools were used, the item would not be stolen. Of course, Noah did not use this bag because he was worried that someone would steal Maxwell's precious jade. The reason why he used this bag was because in the game Yggdrasil, the skills and tools used to steal belonged to the teleportation category. It could be used to teleport, and it could be used to retrieve the player's items from a spatial perspective. In other words, it was to use a spatial jump on other people's items to teleport the item into one's hands. Because of this, tools to prevent theft usually had the effect of preventing teleportation. Putting Maxwell's precious jade in the bag was to prevent Maxwell's spatial jump from breaking the rules, and there was a possibility that he could teleport out of the seal. Even if the possibility was very small, Noah wanted to prevent it. Noah threw the bag containing the precious jade into the golden ripples and let it disappear. He then turned around and said to Vera, "All right, let's hurry and help the others deal with Az Dakaha's doppelganger." "Okay." Vera nodded obediently. Then, the two of them left the scene together. Some distance away from the battlefield where Noah, Vera, and Maxwell were, a few figures were standing on the top of a building. After seeing Noah seal Maxwell with his own eyes and go to deal with the 3-headed demonic dragon's doppelganger with Vera, Galji's expression was slightly uncertain. In the end, he sighed. "Since Maxwell has been dealt with, we should go." As soon as he said this, it immediately attracted a question. "Is that okay?" Aurora asked doubtfully. "Your Highness wants to deal with Maxwell, other than wanting to break away from the control of the Demon King Alliance. You should also want to get the 3rd perpetual motion machine's soul, right?" After an inconspicuous demon obtained the 3rd perpetual motion machine's spirit core, not only did he have the potential to be promoted to a 4-digit number, but he also became an existence that couldn't be defeated. If your highness can obtain the third perpetual motion machine's spirit core, it will definitely be very helpful, right? Gria also said. Is it okay to leave just like that? It was not Galgi who answered Aurora and Glea's question, but Ling, do you think your highness doesn't want the third perpetual motion machine's soul? Ling puffed up her cheeks. It's really too scary to snatch something from that little brother's hands. Indeed, that human strength is very strong, but at best, it's just strength, right? Aurora said so. We can think of a way outside of strength, right? The problem is that the other party is definitely not just a brute with strength. Galgi shook his head. That human is really too unfathomable. Where is the bottom line? We can never see the end. With our current strength, it's definitely unwise to be enemies with him. I think so too. Ling agreed with Galgi's words. We've just escaped the tiger's den of the Demon King Alliance. If we provoke another terrifying enemy, we'll be courting death. Aurora and Glea fell silent. Don't think so much. Galgi smiled slightly. We've done what we should do. Next, let's wait and see if Noah Doria can really pass the human's final trial. Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 1549. In the end, it was only when night fell that the 3 dragon clones that wreaked havoc in the vampire's castle were completely annihilated. As Noah had already informed Sarah and Shadora about this battle in advance and had everyone make preparations, there weren't many casualties. To be more precise, there were almost no casualties. However, there were quite a few people from each community that were injured. As a result, when the battle came to an end, many people directly collapsed. Fortunately, as they had already made preparations for a long battle with Az Dakaha, many of the communities that had the conditions had prepared healing blessings. Because of this, the casualties were kept to a minimum and there wouldn't be any losses. Of course, even with this degree of preparation, there were still some people who were seriously injured that couldn't be healed by ordinary healing blessings. In addition, the healing blessings were limited and there were many people who were injured. Naturally, the supply of healing blessings couldn't meet the demand. Not to mention the others, even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Sarah, Shadora, and the other young girls were injured to some extent. After returning to the throne hall, all of them were lying down on the ground. With no other choice, Noah could only personally take action. Clang! In the throne hall, a burst of resplendent golden light surged out like a tide and covered the entire space. Ugh! Enveloped by the resplendent golden light, Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Sarah, Shadora, and the other young girls all let out muffled cries of pain and happiness. The injuries on their bodies healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the center of the resplendent golden light, Noah raised his luxurious and gorgeous scabbard high up. Beside him stood Letitia and Pest. These 2 young girls were one of the few people who weren't injured after the battle ended. That was to be expected. Although they were facing Az Dakaha's army of clones and there was no lack of god-level existences among them, Letitia and Pest were no ordinary people. Letitia was one of the few people in the castle of vampires with 4-digit strength. Even if it wasn't easy for her to deal with a group of Aziz Dakaha's clones, it was still difficult for her to sustain any serious injuries. As for Pest, she was a true god. Although she was not the strongest species, as a deity, Pest possessed an extremely powerful life force. It was as if she possessed an undying body. Therefore, even though the 2 girls were facing so many 3-headed dragon avatars, they were still able to remain in perfect condition and did not suffer any injuries. Jack also had an immortal body. Therefore, Jack did not suffer any injuries. Since Ai Xia had been riding on Jack's back the whole time, she didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, she was exhausted after a whole day of continuous fighting. She returned to her base and rested. Of course, Vera and Jack went back with them. Thus, among everyone present, except for 3 people, the rest were all members of no name. The first 2 were naturally Sarah and Shadora. The last person was just like Letitia. She was one of the few queen knights in the castle of vampires who possessed a 4-digit level of power. At this moment, the queen knight was staring at the scabbard in Noah's hand that was emitting a resplendent golden light and displaying a powerful healing ability. Beneath the mask, her pretty face seemed to have become more or less serious. Unaware of the queen knight's reaction, Noah continued to raise his scabbard. The golden light from the scabbard enveloped the group of girls and healed their injuries. It didn't take long for Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, Sarah, and Shadora to fully recover from their injuries. Sarah was very surprised by this. Amazing. He actually healed so many people's injuries in such a short period of time. This is the first time I've encountered a blessing with such a powerful healing ability. Mr. Noah's scabbard is indeed very amazing, Shadora nodded repeatedly. Back then, after the Demon King Alliance attacked the city of glowing flames, it was also Mr. Noah who used this scabbard to heal all the participants who were seriously injured. If it wasn't for Mr. Noah, there might have been many casualties. I've also used healing blessings that I could carry around with me, but the effects weren't that great. After being bestowed with a simulated divine spark, the healing effects of those blessings were quite good, Flying Bird said emotionally. But, as expected, a cheap blessing that only bestowed with a simulated divine spark is simply unable to match a true divine spark's blessing? I don't think it's a big deal. Yao stroked her slender arm, and her usually expressionless face relaxed a little. It's fine as long as it doesn't hurt. Yes. Black Rabbit said energetically. I remember there's a saying that no matter if it's a white rabbit or a black rabbit, as long as it has rabbit ears, it's a good rabbit. It's the same principle. Something doesn't seem right, does it? Pest retorted in an extremely calm manner. Why do I seem to remember that no matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it can catch mice, it's a good cat? I know of a saying as well, Letitia sighed. If you're serious, you'll lose. Looking at the group of young ladies who had recovered from their injuries chatting happily, Noah couldn't help but chuckle. The clones that Maxwell had summoned were more or less all of the clones on the ground. Even if there were a few that were missed, there wouldn't be many left. In this battle, not only did they get rid of a demon king with a 4-digit number of clones, they also got rid of so many clones of the 3-headed demonic dragon. In terms of results, it could be considered a complete victory for them. This result allowed the group of girls, who had been tense due to the enormous pressure that AZ Dakaha had brought upon them, to finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief. In addition, Noah's return allowed them to finally have a chance of winning against AZ Dakaha. It was understandable that everyone was in such a good mood that they were able to relax to such an extent. Thinking up to this point, Noah didn't disturb the group of girls from relaxing. He stood quietly to the side and looked at everyone present with a smile. Suddenly, the pure white Queen Knight walked towards Noah's direction and stopped in front of Noah. The Queen Knight's gaze was fixed on the scabbard in Noah's hand, and said to Noah, "Excuse me, can I have a look at this scabbard?" His words attracted the attention of everyone present. Noah didn't seem to think that the Queen Knight, who he had never talked to before and had only seen a few times, would suddenly make such a request. After being startled for a moment, he didn't refuse. "That's not a problem, but is there anything strange about my scabbard?" For ordinary people, the gift of a divine persona was indeed a mythical existence. However, for the Queen of Halloween's favorite, who was an exceptional existence even among the 3-digit numbers, who could be compared to the White Yiksha, it didn't seem to be the reason for the other party to have such a sudden reaction. "No, there's nothing strange about your scabbard." The Queen Knight shook her head. "It's just that there are some things that I want to confirm." "Some things that you want to confirm?" Noah's heart moved, and he remembered the Queen Knight's origin, and he handed over the scabbard in his hand with some understanding. "Please do as you wish." "Thank you very much." The Queen Knight nodded in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. She reached out and took the scabbard in Noah's hand. After gently stroking it, she confirmed some things. "Sure enough, this scabbard is a Celtic mythical object?" "Yes." Noah didn't hide the slightest, and he also explained why the Queen Knight was interested in the scabbard. "It is said that the Queen of Halloween seems to be one of the central figures of the Celtic gods, right?" The queen is indeed one of the Celtic gods in name. In fact, among the people who are directly under the queen, many of them are knights of the Celtic gods. The queen's knight returned the scabbard in her hand to Noah and looked straight at him. If I'm not wrong, this scabbard should have some relationship with King Arthur, right? Noah smiled slightly and took the scabbard. As expected of the Queen of Halloween's favorite. With Noah's affirmation, the Queen Knight just looked at him and suddenly said such a sentence. Sir Noah, can we talk? Chapter 1550. Your Excellency Noah, can we have a talk? When this sentence came out of the Queen Knight's mouth, not only Noah, but even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, Pest, Sarah, Sandora, and the other girls were stunned on the spot, looking at each other. It was no wonder that everyone had such a reaction. They really did not expect this Queen Knight to suddenly talk to Noah. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, Noah's return to this world had only happened yesterday. Up until today, only 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, after learning that Noah was the hero who had forced Dakaha, the final human trial, into a desperate situation, many community leaders in Vampire's castle had actually come to talk to Noah. There were only 3 purposes for doing so. 1. To confirm whether Noah really had the power to match a demon king in the 3 digits, or whether it was just an empty title. 2. To build a good relationship with Noah, a super powerhouse who could compete with a demon king in the 3 digits. 3. If there was a chance, to poach Noah from No Name and let Noah join their community. For this reason, in these 2 days, Noah not only accepted the sun's sovereignty transferred by White Yiksha, but also fought with the legendary half-star spirit, Great Sage, Heaven's Equal, and got rid of Maxwell. Now, Noah had also met with many of the leaders of the various communities who were gathered in the vampire castle and discussed many things with them. Even the leader of Will-O-Wisp, Vera, the strongest demon in the North District, found Noah in an attempt to seek Noah's protection. Not to mention the other communities, all of them scrambled to build a good relationship with Noah and even tried to poach him. In the end, even the people from Salamandra and Dragonhorn Griffin Lion went to look for Noah, as if they wanted to find out if Noah had any intention of jumping ship. In the end, in the entire vampire's castle, only 2 communities did not come to find Noah. One of them was Thousand Eyes. The reason why Thousand Eyes did not come to find Noah was not because Noah did not have a way to attract their attention, but because White Yiksha was currently restricted to the sealed land and could not leave. Thousand Eyes naturally had to place their attention there. The other one was the Queen's Knight, who was directly under the Queen of Halloween. For 2 whole days, not only did this female knight not have any intention of having a proper conversation with Noah, she didn't even try to get close to him. Instead, she continued to dutifully carry out the mission assigned to her by the hierarchy overlords, which was to hunt down the abyssal dragon's avatar. Now, this knight who had been silently carrying out his mission suddenly found Noah, and directly mentioned that he wanted to talk to Noah. Everyone was a little surprised, but that was to be expected. Thus, even Pest couldn't help herself from muttering those words. I thought that someone like the Halloween Queen who occupies the top position in the box court wouldn't be interested in that guy. Before Chu Feng could finish saying those words, Pest started to tremble violently. Because, at the side, Letitia was staring at Pest with emotionless eyes, causing Pest's heart to tremble in fear. In fact, Pest was not the only one who thought so. Including Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, and Yao, the rest of the people thought so. Among the 3 digits, the Halloween Queen was an exception. Although she belonged to the 3 digits, in terms of strength, the Halloween Queen had long surpassed the 3 digits and was enough to be promoted to the 2 digits. Otherwise, how could she be a match for White Yiksha? Not to mention, the Halloween Queen was one of the central figures of the Celtic gods. It was not as if there were no 3 digits under her command. Because of this, everyone guessed that the Queen's Knight did not look for Noah because Noah's strength was not enough for the Halloween Queen's direct subordinates to personally poach him. Only Noah knew. Although the Queen's Knight before him had not come to look for him in the past 2 days, she had actually been secretly observing Noah all this time. At this moment, the Queen's Knight suddenly mentioned that she wanted to talk. Noah immediately looked deeply at her. Faced with Noah's gaze, the Queen's Knight did not avoid his gaze. Instead, she looked back at him with a sincere gaze. That neither servile nor overbearing, noble and unquestionable integrity, caused Noah to involuntarily think of Artoria. His expression eased slightly. Thus, Noah spoke. "Do you want to talk here?" "No," the Queen's Knight shook her head without any hesitation. "If possible, I wish to talk to you alone." "Alone?" Everyone frowned. "Why do you want to talk alone?" Letitia objected. "What matter can't be discussed here?" The Queen's Knight muttered to herself for a moment before saying, "This matter is indeed not suitable to be mentioned in a place with too many people. Because this is a direct order from the Queen." The Queen? Everyone could not help but be taken aback. Noah, on the other hand, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. He seemed to have understood something. Then, the Queen's Knight said to Noah, "Please don't worry, I'm just asking Your Excellency a few questions on behalf of the Queen." Everyone present immediately shut their mouths. It seemed that the title of Halloween Queen had successfully intimidated everyone. "I understand." Noah met the Queen's Knight's gaze and nodded. "Then, let's go outside and talk." The Queen's Knight naturally had no objection. At that moment, Noah and the Queen's Knight walked out of the door together. Seeing Noah and the Queen's Knight gradually disappear into the distance, Flying Bird spoke with some uneasiness. "Don't tell me that even the Queen of Halloween is here to poach him?" "No. It can't be, right?" Black Rabbit's heart immediately became uneasy. There's no reason for a community with more than 3 digits to deliberately poach someone from the lowest level of no name just for Mr. Noah, right? After all, even if they were really tempted, a community with more than 3 digits running to poach a community with more than 7 digits, and a member of no name without a flag and a title, it would not be very good if word got out. But Yao could not help but say this. What if it's really a community with more than 3 digits? Even if the Queen of Halloween really intends to poach him, do you think the Master will agree? Letitia's words woke everyone up. If the Master wanted to leave no name, he could have done so long ago. There was no need to wait until he was poached, and even more so, he would not have joined no name in the first place. That's right. Shadora quickly nodded. I also don't think Mr. Noah will be poached so easily. However, it is a fact that many outstanding communities are eyeing that Mr. Sarah spread out her hands. If it weren't for the fact that I am not confident, I would want to poach him. Hearing this, Flying Bird, Yao, and Letitia all said in unison. Don't even think about it. Yes. Mr. Noah will not abandon no name. Black Rabbit also clenched his fists and said in a very imposing manner. Then, his rabbit ears drooped and he said in a somewhat unconfident manner. But, shouldn't I go and discuss with young Master Ren and increase Mr. Noah's benefits? With that said, the 2 long rabbit ears of the Black Rabbit were grabbed by Fei Niao and Yao respectively, pulling them up with all their might. What kind of depressing words are you saying? You're an idiot rabbit. I'm already very nervous, and you're still adding insult to injury. I'm sorry. Black Rabbit covered his rabbit ears and let out a miserable cry. Letitia and Pest looked at each other, and then looked at Noah and the Queen Paladin who were talking outside the door. They fell silent. Let me introduce myself. My name is Seth Reese. The Queen Paladin who called herself Seth turned around and went straight to the point without any concealment. I know this is very presumptuous, but Mr. Noah, can you please tell me if the White Knight King has really transferred all the sovereignty of the sun to you? Chapter 1551. As soon as she opened her mouth, the Queen Knight who called herself Fei Si directly asked such a sudden and shocking question. However, Noah was not surprised at all as he spoke with a normal expression. You just said that you have a pardon issued by the Queen of Halloween. That is to say, this question, can I take it that the Queen asked you to ask me? Your Excellency is right. Fei Si nodded thoughtfully. This is indeed the question that the queen asked me to ask. Speaking of this, Fei Si thought for a moment and then shook her head. No, that's not right either. The queen only asked me to confirm if Lord White Yiksha had really transferred the sovereignty of the sun to you. She didn't ask me to directly ask your excellency. Directly asking your excellency was just a method of confirmation. Noah did not expect Fei Si to answer like this and was a little surprised. As for what Fei Si wanted to talk to him about, Noah had already guessed it. Because, as mentioned earlier, the Queen of Halloween was the center of the Celtic gods. His existence could almost represent the entire group of gods in the Celtic Empire. Now, many of the gods in the upper echelons were coveting the sovereignty of the sun in White Yiksha's hands. They were trying to gather more than half of the sovereignty of the sun and create a new box court. In this way, the Celtic gods naturally became one of the existences that coveted the sovereignty of the sun. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, had said. In the upper echelons, not everyone was in favor of abandoning the current box court and gathering the sovereignty of the sun to create a new box court. Therefore, whether or not the Queen of Halloween agreed to this proposal, Noah could not say. However, even if this issue was abandoned, it was impossible for the Queen of Halloween not to pay attention to Noah. In the box court, the sovereignty of the sun, which had the most important position, was divided into a total of 24. As the sovereign of the sun, even the 3 strongest species and the many god groups in the heaven realm had the idea of fighting for it. In the past, when the ownership of the sun had not been decided, how could there not be a bloody battle between the various god groups and the strongest species? However, in the box court, although having power was a very important part, having power did not mean that one could do whatever one wanted in the box court. This was because, in the box court, what decided everything was not power, but the game of gifts. In view of this, in the past, in order to determine the ownership of the 24 suns, Hakata had once held a game of bestowment that was open to the entire world. The name of the bestowment game was Solar Sovereignty War. At that time, he stood out and challenged the trial of the sun's sovereignty as White Knight Star Spirit. He repeatedly participated in countless games, defeated the sun god of each god group, and obtained more than half of the 24 sun sovereigns. He was White Yiksha. At that time, Queen Halloween also participated in the Solar Sovereignty War and competed with White Yiksha many times. Although she lost to White Yiksha in the end, she also obtained 6 Solar Sovereignty War and became an existence second only to White Yiksha in the gift game. It was from then on that White Yiksha and the Queen of All Saints fought each other as opponents, burying a grudge and becoming enemies that lasted for thousands of years. Under such circumstances, White Yiksha actually transferred all the solar sovereignty that he had competed for at that time to Noah. As White Yiksha's opponent and enemy, how could Queen Halloween not be curious about Noah? Therefore, after receiving this news, Queen Halloween was very likely to get in touch with Fei Si immediately and let Fei Si confirm the accuracy of this news. In addition, the Solar Sovereignty War was an extremely important existence. As a person who held 6 of the Solar Sovereignty War, it was impossible for her not to understand this point. Whether it was public or private, she would have contact with Noah. Noah expected this. However, Noah did not expect that Fei Si would actually ask directly to confirm whether he had more than half of the Solar Sovereignty War in his hands. Noah thought that this was Queen Halloween's idea. In surprise, Noah asked bluntly, "Do you believe that I won't lie to you?" Direct question. This method of confirmation, no matter from which angle, was the most unwise. After all, no one could be sure that Noah would obediently answer, or simply muddle through, or even spread false information, right? It was impossible for Fei Si not to understand this. However, in this regard, Fei Si just gently shook her head. "I thought so at first, but according to my observations over the past 2 days, you're not the kind of person who would play tricks." "Oh?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean I don't know how to use my brain?" "On the contrary, you not only have great power, but you are also a wise man." Fei Si looked directly at Noah. "So, I don't think you would tell a lie that is not only not believable, but also very easy to be exposed." Noah narrowed his eyes when he felt Fei Si's gaze on him. In the end, he just shrugged his shoulders and left. As expected of Halloween Queen's favorite. Although your way of doing things is not as cautious as I thought, your actions are upright and honest. I don't know whether to criticize or praise you. Saying this, Noah also answered Fei Si's question. You are right, White Yiksha did indeed transfer all of the solar sovereignty war to me. Is that so? Fei Si pondered for a while, then said softly. In other words, you do have more than half of the solar sovereignty war, right? More than half of the solar sovereignty war? Noah looked at Fei Si meaningfully and then smiled. That's not right, I don't only have 14 solar sovereignty war, but 16. 16? Fei Si was stunned. Since you are Halloween Queen's favorite, you should have heard of it, right? Noah said. In the past, in No Name, before its flag and title were taken away, the divine beast called Sun Lion used to have a solar sovereignty war. Moreover, when Az Dakaha was sealed, the Great Alliance of Hierarchy at that time also used a solar sovereignty war as part of the seal. Hearing this, Fei Si understood. In other words, now, the solar sovereignty war also belongs to you, right? That's right. Noah admitted without hesitation. The smile on his face became more intense. Then, after knowing this, what does Halloween Queen's favorite intend to do? The Queen's knight named Fei Si went silent. Noah ignored Fei Si's silence and looked at her, quietly waiting for Fei Si's answer. After a while, Fei Si sighed. If, on behalf of the Queen, I want to use something of equivalent value to exchange for the solar sovereignty war from you, would you agree? Exchange for the solar sovereignty war? Noah could not help but laugh. You really dare to say that, even if it's an exception among the 3 digits, the Queen only has 6 solar sovereignty war. Is there anything else that can be used to exchange for 16 solar sovereignty war? It's not that there isn't anything. Fei Si said sternly. For example, if you are willing to transfer the solar sovereignty war to us, we can guarantee that No Name will rise to 4 digits and take back the glory of being the strongest community in the East District. The unexpected bargaining chip made the smile on Noah's face slowly freeze. Guarantee that a community would rise to 4 digits? Moreover, it was a No Name that had no flag, no name, and was at the bottom of the 7 digits? If this sentence was said by someone else, Noah would have already mocked them. However, when it came from the favorite of the Queen of Halloween, it couldn't be more convincing. If they could obtain the help of the Queen of Halloween, who was an exception among the 3 digits, then even if a No Name rose to 4 digits, it would not be impossible for them to regain the glory of being the strongest community in the East District. It was because he understood this that Noah was speechless. He did not expect Fei Si to use this trick. This was indeed out of Noah's expectations. After all, Noah could care less about anything, but he cared most about his companions. Fei Si had hit Noah's soft spot. Chapter 1552. For Noah, Sun sovereignty was at best something that could strengthen himself and make him stronger. Apart from that, the purpose of Sun sovereignty was to summon star beasts and let them fight for him. One had to know that the existence of a star beast had at least a 4-digit level of combat power, and was even comparable to the 3 strongest species of Box Ting. With such a helper, it was simply unimaginable. Although Noah would not be able to summon the star beasts of this world even if he used Sun sovereignty after leaving this world, the strengthening effects and various abilities of Sun sovereignty were still quite good. However, for the world of Box Ting, the importance of Sun sovereignty was not only reflected in terms of power. No matter which world it was, the existence of the sun was necessary. Without the sun, life would not be able to survive. It was precisely because of this that if the gods of the heavens wanted to create a new Box Ting, they had to have more than half of Sun sovereignty. Otherwise, without Sun sovereignty, there would be no way for sunlight to appear in the new world, and life would not be able to continue to survive. That was not all. The existence of the sun was even deeply related to the laws of the heavens. If the new Box Ting did not have the grace of the sun, it would definitely cause the entire laws of the heavens to collapse, which would affect the world itself. In the end, the universe of the various myths would be completely messed up because of this, causing the gods to go extinct one by one. That was not impossible. Therefore, to create a new box ting, sun sovereignty was absolutely necessary. Apart from that, sun sovereignty also had various other uses. For example, Galgi needed the sovereignty of the sun to perfect his spirituality and become the supreme savior of the world. For example, the gods of various god groups could use sun sovereignty to create all kinds of divine beasts and star beasts that had a deep relationship with the sun to increase their strength. For example, individuals, or even groups of people who had comprehended the power of the sun might be able to have more experience and understanding of the power of the sun by using sun sovereignty. From there, they would be able to sublimate into a god like the son of the sun, or even the god of the sun. For example, if one obtains sun sovereignty, they could even change the nature of the existing sun and obtain all kinds of miracles. All in all, sun sovereignty had a wide range of uses. Even for those who had 2 or 3 digits, it was a treasure trove. It was even an inexhaustible treasure trove. Because of this, Noah was able to ask Athena and asked her to start from the nature of sun sovereignty and develop another way to use sun sovereignty. From this, it could be seen how important the sovereignty of the sun was. It was not without reason that everyone was pursuing it. However, no matter how important it was, in Noah's eyes, the sovereignty of the sun could not be compared to the importance of his companions. If the sun's sovereignty could allow Noah's companions to live a peaceful and happy life without any worries, Noah would be willing to give away all 24 suns' sovereignty, let alone the 16 suns' sovereignty that he had. It was unknown if Faye C had seen through Noah's regard for his companions. That was why she proposed to raise no name's value to 4 digits in exchange for the sovereignty of the sun. This made it impossible for Noah to object in the first place. However, Noah was not a fool. He would not be blinded just because he was moved. Thus, Noah took a deep breath and calmly asked such a question. I heard that the upper echelons of the Hakadah are ready to abandon the lower realm and go to build a new Hakadah, right? Faye C's breath stopped slightly. Under such circumstances, Noah continued. I've also heard that only the Asura gods and Buddhas of the upper echelons can move to the new box court. The rest will be abandoned by the various groups of gods and will be buried with Az-Dakaha. I wonder if that's true. Faye C fell into an indescribable silence. Looking at the silent Faye C, Noah said sarcastically. If I give the sovereignty of the sun to Queen of All Hallows, can Queen of All Hallows make the decision and be responsible for destroying Az-Dakaha and protect the entire Hakadah? That's impossible. Faye C closed her eyes. Even the queen would not be able to destroy absolute evil. Az-Dakaha has the property that only humans can kill him. Moreover, Az-Dakaha also has the another cosmology, which has the power to kill gods. Noah exposed Faye C's thoughts in one breath. No matter how many gods come from the heavenly realm, they will only make Az-Dakaha stronger. Once he is killed, even his existence will be erased. He will not be able to revive even if he wants to, which is equivalent to completely disappearing. The upper echelons of the gods would not take such a big risk to deal with an opponent that cannot be killed, right? Faye C was speechless. In fact, it was also because of this reason that many gods in the heavenly realm were prepared to abandon the Hakadah after Az-Dakaha broke out of the seal. Of course, this was not all. The War God Council, led by Sakra, was in existence that considered the living beings of the lower realm. Among the rest of the gods, there were more or less people who were unwilling to abandon the Hakadah. However, since the decision to abandon the Hakadah had been made, it meant that this group of people was only a minority. I only have one question for you. Noah stared at Faye C. Did the Queen of Halloween agree to abandon the Hakadah? The Queen did not agree, but she did not object either. She is a neutral party. Faye C answered honestly. Whether she continues to live in the old Hakadah or moves to the new Hakadah, to the Queen, there is no difference. In other words, even if you can't say that she is not going to help, the Queen still intends to be a bystander, right? Noah sighed. Then, I'm sorry, but I will not hand over the sovereignty of the sun. Is this okay? Fei Si couldn't help but ask. If you use the sovereignty of the sun as an exchange, I believe that with the Queen's ability, it is not impossible for her to obtain the opportunity to move to the new Hakata for everyone. But it's only na name, right? Noah said faintly. Even the Queen has no way to obtain the right to live in the new Hakata for everyone in the Hakata, right? Yes. Fei Si first lowered her head, then said. I didn't expect that Sir Noah would go to this extent for the people in the Hakata who you don't know. No, I don't have the sentiments of a savior. Noah curled his lips and smiled. However, if I were to abandon the people I could have saved and flee for my life, how would I be any different from those gods? After saying that, Noah turned his head and looked at his companions in the throne room. Moreover, if I make such a decision, I believe that not only will my companions not be happy about it, they will also scold me. I will also completely fail to live up to White Yiksha's expectations. That is not something I want to do. I understand. Fei Si finally nodded and looked at Noah. In that case, I will not mention this matter to Your Excellency Noah again. However, Your Excellency Noah, please be careful. The gods at the top will not compromise because of this. They will definitely come to you. I know. Noah glanced at Fei Si. Including the Celtic gods, right? Yes. Fei Si nodded indifferently. After all, although the Queen has a lot of say in the Celtic gods, she is not an existence that can decide the fate of the gods alone. I believe that there are also many people who want to move to the new Hakata, right? Also, Sir Noah, you just said that even if the Queen does not intend to leave people in the lurch, she intends to look on coldly from the sidelines. That statement is wrong. Fei Si looked up and stared at Noah. Indeed, the Queen is not like Lord White Yiksha, who cares and cares for the people of the lower realms, but she is not someone who will retreat in the face of a strong enemy. Otherwise, I would not be here. After saying that, Fei Si turned around and walked towards the throne hall. Looking at Fei Si who was walking away, Noah laughed bitterly. That's true. Chapter 1553. The girls in the throne room did not know that Noah and Fei Si were discussing the future of Hakata, something that would decide the fate of everyone in the lower levels of Hakata. They could only see Noah and Fei Si standing outside the door, discussing something. Then, not long after, the conversation ended. After parting ways with Noah, Fei Si walked into the throne room and bowed to the girls. Well then, I'll go rest. What's wrong? Sarah stepped forward. Have you finished what you wanted to talk about? Yes, Fei Si looked at Sarah and said. If there are any new missions, let me know. I understand. Sarah nodded solemnly. Sorry for troubling you. It's nothing. After all, we're all comrades in the same camp. Fei Si looked at everyone in the room. Then I'll take my leave. Sorry. Everyone nodded, including Fei Si. She turned around and walked towards the living quarters of the minister's throne hall. After sending Fei Si off, the girls welcomed Noah's return. Master. Letitia turned her gaze to Noah who was also walking in from the door. She waited until Noah was in front of her before she asked. Is everything okay? The girls all looked at Noah, as if they were interested in the conversation between Noah and Fei Si. Not only that, but Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, and the others also seemed to be a little uneasy. Noah, who saw through the girls' thoughts, laughed out loud. Don't worry, the Queen Knight is not here to poach me to join the Halloween Queen's camp. Is that so? Yao tilted her head and asked bluntly. Then why is she looking for you? Miss Yao. Black Rabbit quickly pulled Yao's hand. Isn't it a little inappropriate to ask like this? Yes, Hakatsuki-san, Fei Niao reminded her. No matter what, they don't want us to hear the content of their conversation. It's not very polite for you to ask directly. What does it matter? Pest crossed her arms and glanced at Noah. If it's not something shameful, it shouldn't be a problem to say it, right? Shadora opened her mouth. That doesn't sound too good either. It doesn't matter. Pest's words aren't completely wrong, Noah shrugged. However, although it can't be said to be shameful, it's not a pleasant topic either. It won't do you any good to hear it. I don't even know if I should tell you. He was being targeted by many god groups in the upper echelons of the box court, and conflicts could occur at any time, entering a state of all-out war. If Noah were to say such words, it would probably scare everyone present to death. After all, that would mean that Noah would have to become enemies with millions or even tens of millions of gods. Among them, there were those extremely terrifying gods with double digits and triple digits, as well as many existences like the three most powerful species. To everyone present, whose highest level was only in the 4 digits, this was really something that was enough to scare them out of their wits. Moreover, among the group of girls present, there were not only his own people, but also Sarah and Shadora. If possible, Noah did not want to involve unrelated outsiders to face the threat of many god groups in the heaven realm. It was enough for Noah to bear that kind of threat alone. It was not that Noah was treating himself as an outsider, but even if he were to say it, it would only increase the uneasiness and worry of the group of girls. There was no other use. Similarly, Noah was not trying to be brave and planned to bear all the burden. If he couldn't do it himself, Noah wouldn't mind borrowing the strength of others. However, it was not that Noah did not have any means to deal with it. To let Noah face the many gods of the upper level alone, he definitely did not know how to write the word death. Noah's current strength was at most a triple-digit level in the heaven realm. And among the many god groups that he was about to face, not to mention triple digits, even double digits might appear. Under such circumstances, Noah, who was only in the 3 digits, against so many terrifying existences, wanting to win was simply wishful thinking. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, was a good example. As the leader of the great sage of 7 heavens, who had once clashed with the entire heaven realm and fought against the most god groups in history, although the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had turned the entire heaven realm upside down, in the end, he was suppressed by Shakyamuni, who was in the 2 digits. Compared to the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Noah did not have so many people around him, and every one of them was the brother and sister of a famous demon king. Furthermore, he was the enemy of the entire upper level of the heaven realm, which was more than the number of god groups that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had. In the end, the result would definitely not be good. However, Noah also had a trump card that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, did not. With it, Noah's chances of winning against the many god groups in the heaven realm, even if he was alone, was not 0. Of course, Noah's chances of winning were not 100%. For this, Noah felt that it was necessary for him to further improve his strength. Thinking of this, Noah felt a little anxious. At that moment, Noah said to the group of girls present, "No matter what it is, you will know in the future. Today has been a tiring day, it's time to rest." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, and finally, they nodded helplessly. The night was like a black curtain, enveloping the entire vampire castle that was suspended in midair. The faint, cool moonlight penetrated the clouds and poured down, shining into the silent castle and the quiet throne hall. Finally, through a window in the throne hall, the moonlight shone into a room, bathing Noah, who had just come in from outside, in the moonlight. After entering his room, Noah sat on the bed and closed his eyes slightly. His mind did not turn to the cosmic sea in the depths of his heart, but sank into a dark hole. Buzz. Within the dark void, an extremely vast amount of energy was constantly circulating. It was like an endless sea with no end in sight. In the surroundings of the dark void, strands of brand new energy surged in from all directions like streams of water. They poured into the void like air currents, causing the endless sea of energy to continuously accumulate. That dark hole was naturally Noah's energy source. Ever since the snake of the infinite dragon god Orpheus was used as a base to create such an energy source that could accommodate endless energy, the energy inside had been absorbing the energy automatically recovered from Noah's body, entering a state of endless growth. At this point, the energy stored in this energy source was almost impossible to use up. The God Slayer was known to have a curse power that was hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of times more than the average famous magician and conjurer. The curse power stored in Noah's energy source was probably hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, or even hundreds of billions of times more than the God Slayer. How could this level of energy be used up? Even if it was compared to the black mud from the Black Holy Grail, which was known to have unlimited magic power, if all the energy in the energy source were to be converted into magic power, then it would be millions or even tens of millions of times more, right? However, this energy was only inexhaustible. It was not truly limitless. Now, in Noah's hands, he held a card that could make this energy truly infinite. Feeling the abundant energy in the energy source in his body, Noah opened his eyes. With a flip of his hand, a bag immediately appeared. Reaching into the bag, Noah took out a piece of precious jade. It was a piece of precious jade that was the size of a palm, and its surface was engraved with mysterious runes that exuded radiance. In this piece of precious jade was sealed the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine. Looking at the precious jade in his hand, Noah muttered to himself, "If I can get the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, then my energy will become truly infinite, and even my physical strength and mental strength can become an infinite perpetual motion machine, right?" That's right. Noah was thinking about the third perpetual motion machine. Chapter 1554. The demon king named Maxwell was actually just a paradox demon that was denied by science. As mentioned earlier, demons like this were actually very weak. Even if they were attacked by ordinary physical means, they could be torn apart like paper tigers. Let alone becoming a four-digit existence, it would be difficult for such a demon to become a demon king who abused the organizer's authority. In the end, not only did such a Maxwell successfully become a demon king, but he also became a four-digit existence. In the end, though it was partly due to the fact that he was a demon that mastered thermodynamics and could freely control the power of the realms of cold and warmth, as well as perform spatial leaps at will, it was still the third perpetual motion machine that gave Maxwell such power and status. It was because of this spiritual core that Maxwell became an almost undefeatable existence. Not only that, the reason why Maxwell could control the realm of cold and warmth to the level of space jump was also largely due to the third perpetual motion machine's ability to generate energy out of nothing, which allowed him to use the power of heat and cold to expand a lot. Without the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, let alone a four-digit number, Maxwell did not even know if he could squeeze into a five-digit number. Such a spiritual core could have such potential when used by a demon who was like a paper tiger. If it was used by Noah, it would be helpful, right? Although Noah was not like Maxwell, who did not have a body and could rely on the third perpetual motion machine's ability to generate energy out of nothing to resurrect infinitely, if he could obtain the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, then at least Noah's magic power, divine might energy, and even physical strength and mental strength might reach infinite. In that case, it would be of great help to Noah. After all, regardless of the fact that magic power, and divine might were inexhaustible and could be considered semi-infinite energy, and regardless of the fact that physical strength had never been a factor that troubled Noah, just the fact that his mental strength could be infinite was already a great help to Noah. Firstly, Noah would be able to use spells that originated from his ability points without any restrictions. He would no longer have to worry about fainting due to the exhaustion of his spirit. It was even possible that the spells themselves could be strengthened. Secondly, the limitless power of the spirit would cause Noah's mental burden to be equally limitless. Even if he did not use the dragon sun's sovereignty to strengthen himself, he could still bear the burden of using his avatars at the same time. Moreover, it wasn't just the mental burden of using two avatars at the same time. Even if it was the mental burden of using all 10 avatars at the same time, it was possible to bear it completely. Then, Noah only needed to keep fighting, gain experience, and increase his ability value. He also needed to solve the problem of the burden on his body and increase the number of avatars he could use at the same time. Then, why would he worry about not being able to become stronger? However, it was not so easy to obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine. Staring at the jade in his hand, Noah narrowed his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he extracted some energy from the energy source in his body and poured it into the jade through his fingers. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the jade in Noah's hand trembled violently, and a burst of strong light burst out from within. Immediately, Noah discovered it. The little energy he poured into the jade seemed to have drilled into a storm and was crazily sucked in. Following this little bit of energy, an extremely crazy will was transmitted to Noah's heart. Roar, ah, 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 ah. Suddenly, in the depths of Noah's mind, a crazy, beast-like roar without any rationality resounded. Noah was shocked, as if he had been electrocuted. He quickly cut off the energy that was poured into the jade. The next second, the crazy roar that resounded directly in Noah's mind and the crazy will that was transmitted to his heart immediately disappeared. Sigh. Noah sighed. It really didn't work. The spirit of the third perpetual motion machine was not without an owner. The jade in Noah's hand did not seal the third perpetual motion machine without an owner, but the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, the Demon King. Under such circumstances, unless Noah could extract the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine from Maxwell's body, otherwise, how could he obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine? Just now, the crazy will that he felt in the jade was Maxwell's resistance, right? TSK. Noah could not help but be speechless. Since you have already lost your rationality, why don't you just die and leave the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine behind? As soon as this sentence fell, a young, clear, but mature and deep voice suddenly sounded in Noah's mind. If you want to obtain the so-called spirit, I also agree with you doing so. The familiar voice made Noah startled at first, but he immediately reacted. Athena? Hearing Noah's call, Athena smiled with some joy. Ever since I became your follower, I can often feel that you have troubles. I really don't understand how I can be subdued by such a good-for-nothing person like you. Long-winded. Noah said with some awkwardness. I am a human, not a desireless god like you. How can I not have troubles? Gods naturally have troubles too, Athena retorted. For example, I used to worry about whether to let you die in the hands of Prince Rama, or to end your fate with you before Prince Rama awakens. In the end, I could not bear to see you die in the hands of anyone other than me, so I resolutely declared war on you. Although, in the end, neither you nor Rama can do anything to me. Noah curled his lips and asked. Since you have come out, can I understand that you have a way to help me obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine? Didn't I tell you the method just now? Athena said so. Kill that useless demon and use the power of the priest. You should be able to smoothly extract the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, right? Kill? Noah rolled his eyes. If I could kill it, would I still have to worry about it? Why can't you kill it? Athena said faintly. Use your horde to create a slave beast, let it swallow the bead in your hand, and use the power of destruction on the demon inside. Isn't that enough? Destruction? Noah frowned. There is no way to defeat Maxwell who has the third perpetual motion machine. The power of destruction will only make him die once, and he will be resurrected soon, right? If you use the horde of destruction, of course, the result will be the same. Athena said so in a very calm tone. But you don't only have the power of authority. Don't you have the grace of the goddesses of other worlds? Grace? Noah's heart skipped a beat. Are you talking about my ability value? That's right. Athena's words woke him up. There is a development ability in your ability value called mystery. It seems to be a power that can create miracles to a certain extent. If this ability is triggered, perhaps, you will be able to kill the target that you originally couldn't kill. But, Noah said with some hesitation. When I was fighting with Maxwell, I killed him so many times, but it didn't trigger mystery. It's just a matter of probability. Athena reminded him. That's why I asked you to use the power of the horde to create a slave beast and swallow that demon. Using the power of destruction repeatedly will trigger the development ability of a mystery sooner or later. Noah was suddenly enlightened. Thank you, Athena. Athena didn't say anything else. It seemed that she really couldn't stand the troubled Noah anymore, so she came out to remind him. Noah didn't mind and turned the energy in his body into a source of divine power. You have violated the contract and brought evil to the world. The Lord said, sinners will be punished. Their backs will be crushed, their bones, their hair, their brains will be dug out, and their blood and soil will be trampled on. If I can't get close to you, I will follow the Lord's words and give you a hammer of destruction. In Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns turned and pointed to the horde. Chapter 1555. Bang! Divine power surged out from Noah's body like waves of chi. Like a flame, it enveloped Noah's body, slowly burning. Noah's surging divine power surged in the space and gathered in front of Noah. With a spin, it condensed into a golden wolf. Roar! The burning golden wolf raised its head and howled at the moon. Looking at the golden wolf in front of him, Noah raised his hand and threw out the precious jade engraved with mysterious runes. The golden wolf's eyes suddenly flashed with a faint light, as if it had received some kind of order at this moment. Its 4 limbs tightened, and with a spring, its entire body pounced toward the jade treasure that was thrown at it. In mid-air, the golden wolf opened its mouth wide and swallowed the jade that was engraved with mysterious runes. Then, it steadily landed on the ground. In the next second, the golden wolf lay down, closed its eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. However, as the golden wolf fell into a deep slumber, a dazzling white light slowly bloomed from its body. The brilliant white light was not very strong, but it was like a small sun, enveloping the golden wolf's body. Buzz, 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 buzz. Right at this moment, within the brilliant white light that enveloped the golden wolf's entire body, a burst of intense light that was completely different seemed to tremble and burst forth. Roar! That, a frenzied roar sounded from the golden wolf's body. As if he had expected this, Noah increased the divine power in his body and poured it into the golden wolf's body. Clang! Suddenly, the dazzling white light that blossomed from the golden wolf's body became even brighter, as if it was suppressing the sudden appearance of a completely different intense light, firmly suppressing it, and pulsating it again and again. That scene was like a beating heart. As the dazzling white light pulsated, the completely different intense light was suppressed bit by bit, causing an even more violent resistance. It was Noah's misconception. Noah felt that Maxwell's frenzied roar seemed to have a faint taste of despair and pain. But this discovery not only did not arouse Noah's pity, but it also made him more spirited. He simply used the dragon's sovereign son to strengthen the output of his divine power and poured it into the golden wolf's body. Clang! The dazzling white light was like a real sun, constantly flickering with brilliance. Within the brilliance, a completely different intense light repeatedly trembled, as if a beast was trying to break free from its cage, but was unable to do so and could only be firmly suppressed. At this moment, the destructive power from the supreme-level destruction magic, Crush, was used dozens of times per second on the jade that was swallowed by the golden wolf. In other words, Maxwell, who was sealed in the jade, was dying at the rate of 10 times per second. Roah! Maxwell's roars were like those of a dying beast, becoming crazier and crazier. Hearing this roar, Noah suddenly smiled. If I continue to wait like this, the development ability of a mystery will be triggered sooner or later. I'll just wait for a while. Leaving these words, Noah closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep like the golden wolf lying on the ground. Only the surging divine power continued to flow out of Noah's divine power source and into the golden wolf's body, maintaining the continuous effect of the Crush ability. The night deepened. Unknowingly, the full moon in the sky was covered by dark clouds, causing the moonlight pouring down on the vampire castle that was suspended in mid-air to fade away. The surroundings became dim. In the room without a trace of light, Noah kept his eyes closed and just mechanically poured out his divine power. His consciousness fell into a half-awake state, resting. The golden wolf lying on the ground also seemed to be in a deep sleep. It did not move for a long time, and only the brilliant white light on its body continued to flicker. Taking a closer look, the strong light, which was completely different from the brilliant white light, had gradually dimmed. Not only that, but the crazy roar that resounded from the golden wolf's body also gradually weakened, until now, it was almost inaudible. Noah did not pay attention to all of this, but let it develop freely. Until a certain moment, the final radiance of the setting sun, a roar full of despair and pain rang out from the golden wolf's body with unprecedented loudness. Bang! The next moment, like a piece of glass shattering in the golden wolf's body, a muffled explosion sounded. At the same time, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his dark and deep eyes were filled with joy. The golden wolf, who had fallen into a deep sleep, also opened its eyes at this moment. It stood up and gradually turned into a cloud of mist, carrying the brilliant white light and disappearing into the air. Then, Noah saw it. A light source was floating in the air where the golden wolf had disappeared. Looking at the light source, Noah's eyes flickered. Is that the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine? Not knowing if it could understand Noah's voice, the light source suspended in mid-air seemed to have become somewhat brighter. Seeing this, Noah smiled slightly and extended his hand toward the light source. The light source suspended in mid-air immediately flew out and landed in Noah's hand. Undoubtedly, there was an unknown light source in his hand, but Noah did not feel any weight or touch, as if the light source did not exist at all. He did not touch anything. However, when Noah raised his hand, the light source lying quietly in his hand moved as well. Holding this unknown light source, the smile on Noah's face gradually disappeared. Immediately, Noah suddenly raised his hand and pressed the light source in his hand directly into his chest. With a very slight tremor, the light source slowly merged into Noah's body. Noah closed his eyes and immersed his mind into his body, controlling the light source that entered his body and moving it in the direction of the energy source. Finally, the light source merged into the dark hole-like energy source. The dark hole-like energy source suddenly stagnated. Like an explosion, in Noah's body, the dark hole-like energy burst open. The endless energy originally stored in the dark hole-like energy suddenly rushed into Noah's body like a flood. That terrifying energy could definitely blow up an existence with a god-level body in an instant. Even if it's Noah, with the blessing of LV, 6th-level ability value, his body's endurance is superb, but it is absolutely impossible to withstand such terrifying energy. If it were before, at this moment, Noah's body would burst like a ball. At that time, the terrifying energy released from his body would instantly destroy the entire vampire's castle. However, like a miracle, the terrifying energy did not know why, but it did not burst Noah's body, but disappeared little by little. No. It did not disappear. To be more precise, it should be said that it was integrated into Noah's body little by little. Originally, with the strength of Noah's body, it could not accommodate so much energy. Therefore, it was necessary to open up an energy source at the beginning to indirectly obtain semi-infinite energy. Now, Noah's body is like a bottomless pit. Even if there is no energy source, he still accepts the terrifying level of endless energy without any burden, and let the energy be accommodated into Noah's body little by little. Noah only felt that his body was absorbing energy, and a sense of fullness emerged little by little. After all, in the past, Noah had only stored and used an almost endless amount of energy. When all these energies were integrated into Noah's body, Noah really had these energies. Under the attack of the increasingly high sense of fullness, Noah could not help but close his eyes again, quietly feeling the changes in his body. The night gradually passed. Chapter 1556. Just like that, the night gradually receded, ushering in a new day. The gentle sunlight shone down from the sky into another room in the minister's throne hall. In this room, Letitia, who was wearing a maid's uniform, was tying a ribbon to the back of her head. She looked at her reflection in the mirror in front of her. After confirming the degree of cleanliness, she nodded in satisfaction, and then muttered to herself helplessly. Habits are really a scary thing. As a former ruler of the hierarchy and a former royal of the vampires, Letitia was very noble in terms of identity, status, and bloodline. Letitia was actually satisfied with her maid's attire. It had to be said that habits were really scary. If someone had told Letitia in the past that she would be satisfied with her maid's attire one day, Letitia would definitely not have believed it. Unfortunately, the current Letitia was no longer the Letitia of the past. I don't have any nostalgia for the identity of the king of vampires. Letitia looked at the maid in the mirror and smiled sweetly. And compared to the life of being sold as a slave in the past, I should be satisfied to be able to be a little maid by master's side now. A beautiful smile appeared on Letitia's charming face. Her waist-length golden hair also reflected the sunlight that shone in through the window, making this young and tender little girl appear astonishingly cute. Now that master has returned, it's time for me to continue my work. In the past month, Noah had lost contact with Aziz Dakaha because of the duel. Since then, although Letitia had always believed that Noah was not dead, she could no longer fulfill her duties as a maid, and this made Letitia feel empty in her heart. Now that Noah was back, Letitia could not wait to continue fulfilling her duties. As a member of the royal family of the vampires, who was once known as the Knights of the Box Court, the ruler of all social classes, and the demon king Dracula, whose name struck fear in people's hearts, the fact that such an existence could not wait to serve others was probably a disease. However, Letitia was willing to have this disease. She sincerely hoped that if this was a disease, it would be best if it could never be cured. Towards her master who had saved her twice, Letitia's heart was filled with more than just gratitude. As a subordinate, Letitia, who had been silently observing Noah from behind, had long been impressed by his temperament and bearing. It would be great if my descendants could also have this kind of awareness. After saying this, Letitia tidied herself up and left her room. Castle of the Vampires, Throne Hall. Letitia walked straight through the corridor that was connected to the main hall and continued forward. Lady Letitia. Good morning, Lady Letitia. Lady Letitia. Along the way, many members of the East, South, and North communities immediately bowed respectfully when they saw Letitia. Good morning. Letitia didn't hold any grudges and returned the greetings to the people around her, causing the people around her to be more or less a little frightened. If there were outsiders present and saw a group of fully armed people bowing respectfully to a maid who looked only 11 or 12 years old with a look of fear and trepidation, they would definitely find it unbelievable. However, this was a very common scene in this place. Because everyone already knew that in the entire castle of the vampires, this little girl dressed as a maid had the highest level of combat power. It was believed that everyone in the vampires' castle of the vampires would never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Back then, when Az Dakaha recovered from his injuries and made a comeback, waging a great war against the rulers of the various classes and the various communities, the little maid in front of him removed the ribbon on her head and transformed into a mature and brave knight. She fought together with the Queen Knight, Faith Reese, who was directly under the command of the Queen of All Saints, and held back the three-headed demonic dragon. Of course, in addition to Letitia and Faith Reese, at that time, among the people who were active at the forefront and directly fighting against Az Dakaha, there were also White Yiksha and 16 knights. Other than these four people, the rest of the people only carried out long-range attacks on the periphery. They simply did not have the ability to intervene in a direct confrontation with the Demon King. In the end, 16 knights was seriously injured by Az Dakaha, and White Yiksha was forced to use his authority as the organizer to seal Az Dakaha. Only Letitia and Faith Reese were lucky enough not to suffer any serious injuries and return safely. Therefore, as people who had personally witnessed Letitia's strength in that battle, no one here dared to treat Letitia as a servant just because she was dressed as a maid. Perhaps, in the entire box court, the only person who could truly treat Letitia as a servant was her master, Noah. Including the people in No Name, no one would truly treat Letitia as a maid. Unfortunately, other people's thoughts were their thoughts. Letitia's own thoughts were the most important. Ever since she became Noah's subordinate, Letitia had already decided on her own identity. Even if others did not treat Letitia as a maid, Letitia herself had to be clear about her identity as Noah's maid. Therefore, no matter what kind of person they were, Letitia, who had positioned herself as a maid, would always return the greeting. Until a voice rang out. "You're still as proper as before." Following this voice, Pest, who was also dressed in maid attire, slowly walked over from the other side of the corridor. The expression on her pretty face was extremely calm. Isn't it good to enjoy the respect of others once in a while? You are the one who should be more aware of your own identity. Letitia turned her gaze toward the calm Pest and said. Don't forget, you are also a maid. I am not a maid. I am only that guy's subordinate, Pest corrected. Even if he is my master, there is no reason for me to become a maid, right? Can't I be his follower or guard? Oh. Letitia's crimson eyes glowed with a hint of light. In other words, you are dissatisfied with your identity as a maid? Pest, who was being stared at by Letitia, stiffened. Her calm expression became somewhat weak. The pitiful Black Death original Demon King feared nothing in the world. Yet, he was completely suppressed by Letitia. It's not that I'm dissatisfied. Pest's expression was somewhat stiff. She spoke in a somewhat stubborn manner. It's just that, even if we are maids, we are still that guys. Before Pest could finish her words, Letitia's gaze turned dangerous. Sensing a chill running down her spine, Pest hurriedly changed her words. We are only master's maids. There is no need for us to treat others as maids, no? Hearing those words, Letitia wrinkled her beautiful brows and began to ponder. You can't say that everything you said is wrong, but as master's maids, if we act arrogantly and give others a feeling of superiority, master will also lose face. No matter what, we can't neglect basic etiquette. Pest curled her lips disapprovingly. But, she did not say anything else. After all, Pest knew very well what was going on. Anything else could be discussed. However, when it came to Noah, as long as it was something that did not benefit Noah in the slightest, Letitia would definitely not negotiate. It was because she understood this point that Pest spoke as if she was possessed by some supernatural force. Are you really that willing to become that guy's subordinate and allow your authority to fall into the hands of others? This question caused Letitia to raise her eyes slightly. She looked straight at Pest. Only then did Pest realize what kind of question she asked. Her expression froze once again. With that one sentence, Pest's thoughts toward Noah were completely revealed. Chapter 1557. An indescribable oppressive atmosphere immediately filled the space around Letitia and Pest. That oppressive atmosphere caused the surrounding passers-by to reveal astonished expressions. However, they tactfully withdrew from the area. Not long afterward, only Letitia and Pest remained in the corridor. As a result, an equally indescribable silence filled the space. Letitia merely stared at Pest without saying anything. However, Pest felt as if her heartbeat had sped up. This caused her to be unable to utter a single word. In an instant, her entire body had stiffened. After an unknown amount of time, Letitia finally opened her mouth and broke the silence and oppressive atmosphere. And here I thought that you would be the same as me, that you would have been subdued by Master's dazzling performance and astonishing activity while quietly observing Master as a subordinate. You would no longer be as disgusted by Master's subordinate as you were at the beginning. Letitia's words caused the stiffness on Pest's face to disappear bit by bit. What replaced it was silence. Letitia asked bluntly as she looked at Pest, who had grown silent. Could it be that I'm wrong? You're not wrong. Pest was silent for a long time before replying with an expressionless face. Indeed, after seeing how dazzling that fellow is, I no longer feel as disgusted by becoming his subordinate as I did at the beginning. You merely don't feel disgusted, right? Letitia directly hit the nail on the head. But, there's no loyalty to speak of either, right? Loyalty? Pest took a glance at Letitia and spoke in a mocking manner. I only wish to ask, why should I express loyalty to that fellow? Without waiting for Letitia's answer, Pest interrupted her with a sentence. If you were still the Demon King Dracula and had your game cracked by some unknown fellow and became his subordinate, would you still feel loyalty toward such a person? Letitia stopped breathing. There are two reasons why you are so loyal to that fellow. Firstly, aside from being subordinates, the two of you are also comrades in the same community. You don't have any resistance against him. Furthermore, you have been silently observing him from behind. You discovered that he possesses limitless possibilities. That's why you were willing to become his subordinate. Pest looked straight at Letitia. Furthermore, he saved you from the fate of being unable to resist twice. That's why you're so loyal to him. Am I wrong? Letitia had nothing to say. Pest was right. The reason why Letitia declared her loyalty to Noah so straightforwardly was because Noah had saved her with good intentions from the very beginning. Moreover, both of them were partners in the same community. At that time, Letitia was only grateful to Noah and had no loyalty to him. Later on, Letitia quietly served Noah from behind. Gradually, she noticed how dazzling her master was and was subdued by Noah. After that, Noah rescued Letitia from the unsealed game. The favorable impression Letitia had toward Noah that had been accumulating in her heart all this time erupted in one go. Because of that, Letitia finally developed the determination and loyalty to follow Noah at all costs. In the beginning, Letitia was only grateful to Noah. But, I'm different, Pest's voice entered Letitia's ears. From the very beginning, that fellow and I have been enemies. My ambitions were shattered by him. My revenge against the sun was also ruined by him. Even my former companions were eliminated by you all. With that, how could I still be loyal to him? Letitia was speechless. She could only look at Pest in a daze. She did not know what to say. Seeing the speechless Letitia, Pest slowly clenched her little hands and lowered her head. Her eyes were trembling non-stop as she squeezed out those words. Besides, the only person who was saved is you. He never planned to save me. Those words finally woke Letitia up. Pest. Letitia looked at Pest and hesitated for a moment. Then, she asked in an uncertain manner. Could it be that you're yearning for Master to save you? Pest's delicate body trembled. She bit her lips and turned her back to Letitia. I don't need that fellow to save me. After saying those words, Pest planned to leave. However, Letitia grabbed her hand. Tell me, Letitia looked into Pest's eyes. Exactly what caused you to fall and become a demon king? An existence that possessed the authority of the host and abused it would fall and become a demon king. An existence that had fallen and become a demon king would most definitely possess their own goals. Letitia's actions were due to a momentary lapse in thought. For the sake of avenging her clansmen that had rebelled against her, Letitia was overwhelmed by hatred and became a demon king. Then, she unleashed the most vicious bestowal game in history. Since that was the case, what was the reason why Pest became a demon king? Avenging the sun? That shouldn't be the only reason, no? Letitia said to Pest. Could it be related to the saving you mentioned earlier? So what if I know? Pest spoke mockingly without even turning her head around. You couldn't possibly be thinking of pleading for leniency for me before that fellow so that he could fulfill my wish, right? I don't need that sort of sympathy. To Pest's surprise, Letitia said those words without the slightest hesitation. Why must I plead for leniency for you? That's something that you should do, no? Huh? Pest turned around and looked to Letitia with an expression of disbelief. Something that I should do? That's right, Letitia nodded. If you truly yearn for Master's salvation, you should go and plead for it yourself. Why should I? Pest grew angry. Could it be that when you yearned for salvation back then, you've asked for his help? Hearing those words, how could Letitia not understand? Even though Pest did not become loyal to Noah like Letitia, she was also attracted by the endless possibilities that Noah possessed as she served him as his subordinate. After personally witnessing Noah rescuing Letitia from her irresistible fate and sensing the endless possibilities that Noah possessed, Pest also began to yearn for Noah. She yearned for Noah to rescue her from her irresistible fate. However, Noah had never once shown any attention to Pest. You are his comrade. When you're in trouble, even if you don't ask for his help, he will still be willing to save you. Pest shouted at Letitia as if she was venting all the resentment in her heart. But, to him, I am nothing more than a spoil of war he won from a game. He has never shown any attention to me. No. You're wrong. Letitia tightened her grip on Pest's hand. It is not that Master is not paying attention to you. Heh. Pest sneered. What makes you say that? What makes me say that? Letitia narrowed her eyes. Because Master has never asked you about the Demon King Alliance. You. Pest's eyes suddenly opened wide as she spoke in shock. You already know about it? You were once a member of the Demon King Alliance. Did you think that it would be very difficult for this matter to be exposed? Letitia asked. It's not only me. Master must have also noticed it. No, impossible, Pest began to waver. If he already knew about it, why didn't he ask me about the Demon King Alliance? It shouldn't be hard to guess the reason, right? Letitia's words pierced into Pest's heart. Master is waiting for you to speak. It's not that he is not paying attention to you. Pest was stunned. Seeing such a reaction from Pest, Letitia sighed. Then, she walked past Pest and continued to walk forward. I feel that if you truly desire salvation, you should grasp it yourself and not throw a tantrum here. After all, he is both my master and your master. How could he only save me and not you? After saying those words, Letitia began to walk toward Noah's room. Seeing Letitia's back gradually growing further and further away, Pest still had a stunned expression on her face. However, at the very next moment, Pest followed after him as if she was possessed by a supernatural being. Chapter 1558. On the other side, as soon as Noah opened his eyes, he immediately felt an extremely comfortable feeling of fullness all over his body. Oh, the overly comfortable feeling of fullness made Noah's whole body shiver and let out a comfortable sound. Under such circumstances, Noah couldn't help but stretch. Along with Noah's movements, the bones all over Noah's body seemed to make a comfortable sound, and there was a series of popping sounds. At this moment, Noah only felt that his whole person was different. This kind of feeling was both real and an illusion. However, in general, Noah's change was quite amazing, even if it wasn't earth-shattering. If someone can sink their mind into Noah's body like Noah and see the situation in Noah's body, they will definitely be able to see it. In Noah's body, in the past, the energy source that was constantly absorbing the energy automatically recovered from Noah's body had disappeared. However, in Noah's body, endless energy was like blood, slowly flowing to every corner. It was just like what Noah had expected. After getting the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, Noah finally got unlimited energy in the true sense. With the nature of the third perpetual motion machine to generate energy out of nothing, the current Noah, no matter how much energy is consumed, the energy that fills the whole body will not decrease at all. More precisely, it should be said that even if it is consumed, no matter how much is consumed, it can all be replenished in an instant. In other words, the degree of consumption and the degree of recovery will be proportional to each other no matter what the situation is, reaching true infinity. Not only that, because Noah merged the energy source with the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, the endless energy flowing in Noah's body also has the property of being transformed at any time. Whether it is magic power, divine power, or even any mysterious energy in Noah's memory that can be used, they can be transformed at will with a thought. Including mental power. In other words, Noah also got unlimited mental power as he wished. In this way, no matter how many avatars Noah uses at the same time, the mental burden can be borne. Next, as long as his physical ability is improved and the physical burden on his body is increased, then Noah can increase the number of avatars he can use at the same time. It's better to say that my physical ability has also unexpectedly improved. In the process of integrating the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, the energy in the original energy source was absorbed by Noah's body, which more or less stimulated some of the body's potential. Has-T said that Noah has almost infinite possibilities. The so-called grace of God, in fact, is to stimulate personal possibilities in the way of gaining experience points, in the most intuitive way, adding it to this person's body as nourishment to promote his growth. In this way, Noah's potential was stimulated, which was equivalent to the possibility of sleeping in his body being more or less stimulated. Therefore, Noah successfully triggered this part of the possibility and allowed his ability points to be updated. Noah's Doria LV 6 Strength, I, 0, SSS, 1857, Durability, I, 0, SSS, 1867, Dexterity, I, 0, SSS, 1864, Agility, I, 0, SSS, 1871, Magic, A, 0, SSS, 1855, Mystery, CA Magic, D Swordsman, B Break, B Toughness, IA Magic, Weapon Refining, Steel Making Magic. Copy, refine, and forge weapons. Copy, refine, and forge weapons will be weakened to a certain extent according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Copy, refine, and forge weapons will be maintained according to the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection, Permanent Magic. Permanent protection according to the attributes of the contracted spirit. Contract spirit as a sword spirit, obtain the protection of the sword spirit, and weaken physical attacks on oneself. The degree of weakening increases or decreases according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold Smelting, Quick Attack Magic. Gradually turn the target into steel. Successful tempering will cause the target to shatter. Tempering speed is determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills, Protection from the world, permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. Overall strength increased by nearly 10,000 proficiency points. After reaching LV 6, it was a miracle to be able to increase so much in one go. Perhaps it was because of this miracle, the development ability of Mystery actually increased by 2 levels in one go, reaching stage A. Even the Toughness, which was originally at the lowest stage, seemed to have been stimulated by Noah's physical potential and had undergone a huge improvement. It directly surpassed the 3 development abilities of the Magician, Swordsman, and Shatterer, catching up with the Mystical and reaching the stage. After all, this development ability was originally closely related to the body. It could stimulate the vitality of the body when Noah was severely injured, so that when Noah was severely injured, he would not be affected and could perfectly display his strength. Now, the potential of the body was stimulated, so naturally, the development ability of Toughness was also greatly improved. Just by stimulating a little bit of potential, Noah's ability was worth so much improvement. It could be imagined how amazing the possibilities of Noah's body had reached. It was no wonder that even Hestia was shocked. Letitia and Pest were also attracted by the limitless possibilities. Slightly clenching his fist and feeling the abundant power in his body, Noah's eyes flashed with excitement. Now, even using 3 avatars at the same time is not a problem. Even if I use 4 avatars at the same time, I can still succeed after paying some price, right? What did this mean? It meant that Noah's strength skyrocketed overnight. Coupled with Sun's sovereignty, which was still studying how to use it, perhaps, Noah already had the ability to truly dominate the box. After all, when using 2 avatars at the same time, Noah could already match 3 figures. Being able to use 3 avatars at the same time, he was definitely at the top among 3 figures. And being able to use 4 avatars at the same time, there was absolutely no opponent among 3 figures. Unless the opponent was like the Halloween Queen, who was an exception among the 3 digits. In terms of strength, she could definitely enter the 2 digits. Of course, the only exception among the 3 digits was the Halloween Queen. Therefore, if Noah were to give it his all now, he might be able to contend against those existences in the double digits. But, what about a single figure? Noah gradually calmed down and frowned. It seems that I can't find any description of the existence of a single digit in any ancient book. According to Noah's knowledge, the Asura gods and Buddhas that created the box were all in the 2 and 3 figures. As for the single figure, it was never mentioned. Even an existence like Shakyamuni is only in the 2 figures. Galji, who has completed his spiritual framework, might be able to surpass Shakyamuni, but he is also only in the 2 figures, right? What kind of existence is a single figure? The more he thought about it, the more Noah felt that something was amiss. Thinking about it carefully, the gods in the various mythological systems that I know of are all in the 3 figures. Even the main god-level existences are in the 3 figures. There are some exceptions that are in the 2 figures, but none of them are in the 1 figure. In that case, could it be that there are no existences in the 1 figure range? Or could it be that the existences in the 1 figure range were so powerful that even the 3 strongest races were unable to match them? All of a sudden, Noah fell into deep thought. Right at this moment, someone knocked on Noah's door. "Master, are you awake?" This voice woke up Noah from his deep thoughts. "Letitia?" Noah raised his head. "Come in." After those words left her mouth, Noah's door was opened. Letitia, who was wearing maid attire, slowly walked in. Behind her, Pest lowered her head and silently followed behind her. Seeing Letitia and Pest slowly walking in with her head lowered, Noah's sharp senses picked up on something strange. Chapter 1559. Emin. Right after entering the room and seeing Noah, Letitia had a very peculiar feeling. "Master?" Letitia sized up Noah. A trace of confusion appeared on her tender and adorable face. Letitia's strange behavior caused Pest, who had been keeping her head down the entire time, to raise her head and look at Noah. Then, she too was startled and revealed a puzzled expression. Looking at the strange expressions on the faces of his 2 subordinates, Noah couldn't help but size himself up and asked in confusion. "What's wrong? Could it be that my body is stained with some sort of strange substance?" "No, that's not it." Letitia shook her head and frowned in a vexed manner. She did not know how to describe her feelings. Instead, it was Pest who hesitated for a moment before asking in a probing manner. "Why do I feel like you're different from before?" That's right. This was the reason why Letitia and Pest were behaving in such a manner. Looking at Noah, who was sitting on the bed, both Letitia and Pest felt that something was different from before. The 2 girls did not know how to describe this feeling. If they must describe it, it would be that they felt as if Noah's existence had suddenly become much stronger. It was as if the existence known as Noah Dole had suddenly become very noble. "So that's what you're talking about?" Noah nodded his head in relief. "Perhaps it's because I've obtained the spirit core." "You've obtained the spirit core?" Letitia and Pest were immediately stunned. However, Noah's explanation was correct. As mentioned in the past, the so-called spirit core referred to one's achievements and inheritance. For example, U2 was originally a very ordinary rabbit. However, for the sake of saving an old man who was being burned by fire, she bravely jumped into the raging flames and sacrificed herself. Because of that, she obtained Sakra's acknowledgement and was promoted to U2's. That was a type of achievement. As U2's descendant, Black Rabbit obtained the inheritance of this achievement. Because of that, it was known as the Noble of Box Court. That was the sublimation of life. When a human accomplishes a great feat, they will be honored as heroes. Those who inherited the royal bloodline would be regarded as heirs of a noble bloodline even if they didn't do anything big. These were all referring to existences like Lingu. In the past, Noah only had strength but no spirit. He was just like an ordinary human. Now, Noah had obtained the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine. It was as if he had suddenly completed a great achievement or inherited some kind of bloodline. It was natural that he would give people a feeling of nobility. Letitia and Pest were not newcomers to this place. Naturally, they could understand this logic. Therefore, the two girls were both relieved and surprised. He was relieved because he finally understood what that strange feeling was. They were surprised because Noah had obtained the spirit core. What kind of spirit did Master obtain? Letitia asked curiously. From the looks of it, it seems to be a very unusual spirit. I don't know if it's unusual or not. The corners of Noah's mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly. However, it's a fact that it's extremely helpful to me. As he said this, Noah raised his hand and looked at it. He slowly clenched his fist and spoke with great confidence. Now, even if its existence is like White Yiksha and Halloween Queen, I'm confident that I won't lose. It was a simple sentence, but it was as if thunder had struck them. It made Letitia and Pest's bodies tremble, and their eyes widened. Won't lose to White Yiksha and Halloween Queen? What kind of joke was this? What kind of existences were those two? The former was the most powerful star spirit who had intimidated many groups of gods since ancient times. She had once ruled over all the centers of the universe and was ranked in the top 10 of Box Court. The latter was an exceptional existence among the 3 digits. In terms of strength alone, she could be promoted to the 2 digits. White Yiksha viewed her as an enemy. Even in the entire Box Court, these two almighties were among the top existences. Now, Noah claimed that he was confident that he wouldn't lose to them. If it were someone else, Letitia and Pest would definitely not believe it. However, since it was Noah who said this, Letitia and Pest had no choice but to believe it. It wasn't just because the two girls already knew that Noah possessed limitless possibilities. It was also because Noah's sense of existence and noble temperament were telling Letitia and Pest that their master had indeed obtained extraordinary opportunities. He was already an expert who could force the 3 digits demon kings into desperate straits. Now, he had taken a step further and obtained extraordinary opportunities. With Noah's possibilities, what was strange about him being able to rival White Yiksha and Halloween Queen? Thus, Letitia smiled happily. He actually said that he's confident that he won't lose to White Yiksha and Halloween Queen. Really, does my master have a limit? Pest looked at Noah with a complicated expression. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. Noah's strength had increased. What Pest felt the most was joy. That was because it meant that the hope Pest saw in Noah was not something flashy and without substance. However, at the same time, Pest was at a loss as to what to do. It was as Letitia said. Pest had her own wishes. At the same time, she had noticed Noah's possibilities and believed that he had the ability to help her realize her wishes. Because of that, she had more or less felt a desire to be saved. However, Noah had never shown too much attention to Pest. This caused Pest to be at a loss as to what to do. After all, Pest had said it herself. Before she became Noah's subordinate, she was only Noah's enemy. After becoming Noah's subordinate, she would only be his spoils of war. Under such circumstances, how could Pest possibly have the face to ask Noah to help her fulfill her wishes? Earlier, she had thrown such a huge tantrum before Letitia mostly because of this. Currently, Noah had already become an existence that could match White Yiksha and Queen of All Saints. If Noah was willing to help Pest, it would be very likely that Pest's wish would be fulfilled. This caused Pest to have the urge to pour her heart out to Noah. However, when she thought about how Noah truly did not care about her as much as he cared about Letitia, Pest had a feeling of not knowing where to start. At that moment, Pest was truly at a loss as to what to do. She could only look at Noah with a complicated expression. Naturally, Noah did not know that Pest was feeling so vexed. However, Noah was still able to see through Pest's complicated expression. At that moment, Noah sighed softly and said to Pest, "Do you have something you want to say to me?" Pest's heart tightened. Panic appeared on her face. Why are you so flustered? Noah did not know whether to laugh or cry. If you have something to say, just say it. It's not like I'm going to eat you. Who knows? Pest once again had the urge to pour her heart out. However, the words that came out of her mouth were mocking words. I am merely a subordinate of yours. Whatever you want to do to me, it's up to you. It's not like I can resist. Her sour words were like those of an unfavored concubine. At the same time, Noah became speechless, and Letitia did not know whether to laugh or cry. It would appear that Pest truly held a great amount of resentment toward Noah for the disparate treatment she received. Noah could only scratch his cheeks and say helplessly, very well. It's like you said. No matter what I do to you, you cannot resist. In that case, what else is there for you to be worried about? In any case, you can't resist, right? In that case, why don't you just tell me what you want to say? Pest opened her mouth slightly. She wanted to say something. However, she did not know what to say. Her appearance of wanting to say something yet hesitating caused Noah to feel conflicted. Right when Noah was planning to say something, an extremely frightening pressure suddenly enveloped the entire space. The sudden pressure shocked both Letitia and Pest. Noah's expression grew serious. He suddenly turned his head around and looked outside the window. In the next second, Noah saw it. On the other side of the sky, an innumerable amount of people were slowly surging toward them. It was like a black curtain. Chapter 1560. At the edge of the cloudless and clear sky, a large group of people rushed in like a curtain of night covering the sky. These people were basically all fully armed. Some flew directly in the air. Some were carried by chariots and ark-like mounts. However, there was no doubt that these people were in the same group. Moreover, there were an astonishing number of them. If one looked carefully, they could even see it. In addition to those who were flying in the air, the rest of the people carried by mounts had a flag fluttering in the wind on the chariots and arks. Those flags were of almost all kinds. What did this prove? It proved that these people who rushed in from the other side of the sky belonged to different communities. However, at this very moment, such a group of people was swarming over from the other side of the sky. Not long after, an astonishing number of people flew to the sky above the vampire's castle. Soon after, one of the people in the lead spoke in a cold voice. Surround that castle for me. The rest of the leaders nodded one after another, indicating their agreement. Suddenly, the huge crowd covering the entire vampire's castle spread out, surrounding the castle floating in the air, surrounding the entire castle. What happened? Where did so many communities come from? Why are they surrounding us? What the hell happened? In the castle of vampires, all the communities were in a state of panic, causing an astonishing commotion on the streets. In the next moment, a voice rang out from the sky above the entire vampire's castle. Don't panic. That voice was obviously using some kind of gift, which caused every corner of the ancient castle to resonate. However, hearing this voice, the communities that fell into panic seemed to have found their backbone and gradually calmed down. Immediately, in the center of the castle, in front of the throne room, several pterosaur-shaped fire dragons soared into the sky and flew into the sky. Above, Sarah, Shadora, Mandora, and the others were sitting. In addition to Sarah, Shadora, and the others, there was also a group of members of No Name, Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, and even Wren. Noah, on the other hand, brought Letitia and Pest to float in the air alone, looking at the sky with a group of people. Looking at the sea of people surrounding the vampire's castle floating in the air, Noah's eyes gradually turned cold. Not for other reasons, but because Noah knew the background of these people. Not only Noah, but the others also recognized the origin of these people. Looking at the flags fluttering on the chariots and arks, Sarah cried out in shock. Are those the communities belonging to the upper gods? Yes. Those fluttering flags were all the flags belonging to the communities belonging to the many god groups in the heavens. Moreover, They are all flags of communities with at least 4 digits, Mandora also said in shock. Why did the communities belonging to the gods in the sky suddenly come here? Could it be? Shadora couldn't help but say. Are they the reinforcements sent by the Sky Army to help us suppress the Demon King? No, definitely not. Ren's face was filled with nervousness and worry. If they were reinforcements, they wouldn't surround us so aggressively like this. In other words, they didn't come with good intentions. Those guys were definitely not his allies. Then why? Black Rabbit couldn't help but ask. Why did the communities belonging to the upper gods surround us like this? Hearing this, Noah finally spoke. Don't worry, their goal is not you, but me. You? Everyone immediately looked at Noah in surprise. Noah didn't pay attention to the surprised gazes of the crowd. He just looked at the army that surrounded the entire castle. In the completely uncountable sea of people, Noah only noticed the group of people in the lead. Only from that group of people did Noah feel a very unusual aura. Are they all gods? The gods here referred to not only the acquired gods. Noah's sensing ability clearly told him, undoubtedly. Among that group of gods, there were even natural gods. The strongest species. The existence in charge of leading the god army was one of the 3 strongest species. Among them, there was even a 3-digit existence. Because of this, everyone was so shocked. Noah looked at the group of gods and distinguished the flags that were fluttering near them. I see, almost all the gods of the mythological system are here, even the gods of the Celtic mythology are here. That was why Faith Reese didn't appear. After all, if she appeared here, the Queen Knight wouldn't be able to choose a side. While Noah was calmly identifying the origins of each group of gods, the leading group of gods were also looking at each other and discussing. They seemed to be deciding who would represent each group of gods on this expedition. After a while, the person who first ordered the encirclement stood up. It was a god wearing an ancient-style robe. Judging from the terrifying pressure on his body, he was definitely a 3-digit existence. Moreover, he was the strongest species. The moment he stepped forward, the ancient god spoke to Noah and the others below with an emotionless tone. Among you, there should be a human called Noah Dole, right? That one sentence completely confirmed what Noah said earlier. These people were here for Noah. Noah? Faye Nyao looked at Noah in surprise. What did you do? What do they want to do to you? Yao also spoke in a surprised and doubtful manner. Noah? Noah shook his head at Faye Nyao and Yao. He didn't say anything and simply walked forward. Master. Letitia and Pest were slightly shocked. Just as they were about to step forward, they were stopped by Noah. You don't need to come out, Noah said indifferently. Just stay there and watch. It will be over soon. After saying those words, Noah left the crowd and walked in midair as if he was walking on flat ground. As a result, the eyes of the gods surrounding the entire castle of vampires all converged on Noah. The ancient god also stared at Noah and said coldly. Are you Noah Dola? Asked Noah Dola. I am. Noah stopped walking. He looked at the ancient god and shrugged. Lord God, may I ask what brings you here? You already know the answer, the ancient god coldly humphed and said without any scruples. From the very beginning, we only have one goal, and that is your son's sovereignty. Son sovereignty? Sarah and Shadora were stunned. Son sovereignty? Black Rabbit, Fei Nyao, Yao Yuran and the others were also stunned. Only Letitia and Pest trembled and stood up in shock. Why? Pest's face was filled with astonishment. Why would the upper-class gods know that Guy has son sovereignty? No. That's not the main point. Letitia's tone became somewhat anxious. The real question should be why the upper-class gods actually came out in full force for two-son sovereignty. Two-son sovereignty? The ancient god seemed to have heard Letitia's words and said mockingly. It seems that you still don't know. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Then let me tell you. The ancient wind god said loudly. Noah Dole doesn't just have 2 sons' sovereignty. The White Knight King has already transferred all of his sons' sovereignty to this human. He has at least 14 sons' sovereignty, which is more than half of the sun's sovereignty. Wah! Everyone was shocked. More than half of the sun's sovereignty? Black Rabbit was shocked. Lord White Knight King actually transferred all of his son's sovereignty to Mr. Noah. This. Even Letitia didn't think of this and was suddenly at a loss. More than half of the sun's sovereignty? Pest looked at Noah with a gaze filled with shock, surprise, and even ecstasy. That guy, he already has more than half of the sun's sovereignty? At this moment, everyone was completely shocked and lost their voice. Chapter 1561. The entire world fell into an indescribable silence. Everyone present, whether it was Hey Tu, Fei Niao, Yao, Letitia, Pest, Ren, Sarah, and Shadora, or the various communities still in Castle of Vampires, all of them fell into a state of absolute silence. At this moment, there was only one expression on everyone's faces as they looked at Noah. That was shock. Why were White Yiksha and Halloween Queen so transcendent? Apart from their own strength, a large part of the reason was their sovereignty over the sun. The importance and uniqueness of the sun's sovereignty had been mentioned many times before, so there was no need to mention it again. White Yiksha alone occupied 14 of the 24 sun sovereigns, while Halloween Queen occupied 6. Only the remaining 4 were allowed to flow out and be fought over by others. This led to White Yiksha and Halloween Queen's transcendent status. Now, White Yiksha had transferred the sovereignty of 14 sons to Noah. According to the conversation just now, everyone knew that Noah himself seemed to hold the sovereignty of the other 2 sons. Didn't that mean that Noah alone held the sovereignty of 16 sons, which was more than White Yiksha and Halloween Queen in the past? This fact caused everyone's hearts to waver. A huge commotion once again emerged in the vampire's castle. However, this time, Sarah and Shadora, the 2 rulers of the hierarchy, no longer spoke up to suppress it. This was because even the 2 of them were shocked by this fact. For a moment, they didn't react. Noah could naturally understand how much commotion the matter of him possessing so many sons' sovereignty would cause. However, that had nothing to do with Noah. You're right. Noah nodded and admitted generously. White Yiksha has indeed transferred all the sun's sovereignty to me. So, you should know what to do, the ancient wind god said casually. As long as you hand over the sun's sovereignty, we will immediately retreat. We won't make things difficult for you people from the lower realm. It was only now that everyone understood why so many groups of gods had appeared in the heaven realm and appeared here. If they could obtain more than half of the sun's sovereignty from Noah's hands, no matter which god group they belonged to, their status and power would increase exponentially. It was not impossible for them to instantly surpass the rest of the god groups. However, no one had expected that. For the sovereignty of those sons, the gods of the heavenly realm actually turned out in full force, and even brazenly launched an attack. After all, what was the difference between such actions and robbery? Ranked in the upper echelons of the box court, there were at least 4 digits of existences, yet they were actually fighting in groups. He believed that after today, the reputation of all the gods in the heavenly realm would be completely ruined, right? However, those who had such thoughts did not know. The gods of heaven had already decided to abandon Box Ting and let them fend for themselves. In this way, why would the gods of the heaven realm care about how bad their reputation was? Therefore, the groups of gods no longer cared about their reputation. They formed an army of gods and started plundering. Should I admire you guys? Or should I mock you? Noah looked directly at the ancient wind god and said with a faint smile. For a human from the lower realm like me, almost all of the gods in the heavenly realm are mobilized. You guys really think highly of me. You don't have to mock us like this. Noah Dole, we already know what kind of ability you have. The ancient wind god was not moved at all. To be able to force Az Dakaha into a corner, there's no doubt that you're as powerful as a 3-digit number. Coupled with the fact that you have more than half of the sun's sovereignty, your threat is enough to rival that of a main god. In the past, the great sage equal to heaven had the ability to mess with many god groups in the heavenly realm. He was only suppressed when more than 3 digits of powerful existences took action. The ancient wind god looked deeply at Noah. Although you are not like the victorious fighting Buddha who has the help of many demon kings, we think that you, who have more than half of the sun's sovereignty, are even more of a threat than the great sage equal to heaven. In order to not make any mistakes, we turned out in full force. You should feel honored. I said that you guys are fat, and you guys are really panting? Noah could not help but laugh. Honored? Would you feel honored when you were blocked by a group of robbers and robbed of your money? Don't say things that will make people laugh their heads off, okay? Noah's words caused a slight commotion among the group of gods. The leaders of the strongest species all cast angry and cold gazes at Noah. It made the pressure in the entire world suddenly increase. Obviously, to these strongest species who were born as gods, being mocked by a human was a very humiliating thing. Even the ancient wind god's face began to turn cold. So, you don't want to hand over the sun's sovereignty? White Yiksha transferred the sun's sovereignty to me because she wants me to help her protect the people in the lower realm. Noah glanced at the ancient wind god and narrowed his eyes. Since you guys have already made such a decision, you don't think that I will obediently hand over the sun's sovereignty, right? In other words, for the sake of the sun's sovereignty, you are willing to fight against all the gods, the ancient wind god said sarcastically. I admit that you, a human, are indeed very impressive to have the power to match even the existence of a main god. However, not only do we have many of the strongest species on our side, but all of them are ranked in the triple digits. Even the quadruple digits of the gods have come out in full force. Do you think you can fight against so many gods here? As the ancient wind god's words sounded, the thousands of gods surrounding the entire vampire castle released their pressure, filling the world with a terrible pressure. That pressure had already caused the faces of No Name's group to turn pale, while the members of the community within the ancient castle all felt that their breathing had become labored. If it were not for the fact that the pressure released by those gods was targeted at Noah, and that Noah bore more than 99% of the pressure released by the gods in the sky would definitely make the minds of those who were not even in the top 4 digits collapse. In the face of the terrible pressure, Noah was the only one who looked normal. Is that all you want to say? Seeing that Noah was still calm under the terrible pressure released by the gods in the sky, the group of strongest species in the lead changed their expressions, and they could not help but think more highly of Noah. I have to say, your decision is very unwise. The ancient wind god also felt that Noah was not simple, so he immediately changed the topic, as if he did not want to confront Noah directly. Although the sun's sovereignty is precious, it is impossible for you to keep so much sun's sovereignty. As long as you have more than half of the sun's sovereignty, all the gods in the celestial realm will see you as a target. Do you really want to be the enemy of all the gods? The ancient wind god's words made Noah raise his eyebrows. What are you trying to say? I want to say that our goal is only the sun's sovereignty, and we do not want to make things difficult for you, the ancient wind god said. How about this, if you are willing to give us the 14 suns sovereignty that the White Knight King transferred to you, then we will not take away the 2 suns sovereignty that you originally held. What do you think? After saying that, the ancient wind god used some unknown power to directly communicate with Noah's mind, and said in Noah's mind. Not only that, but we can also raise you and your companions to 4 digits, so you can obtain the right to move to the new courtyard, and you will not have to worry about the group of ordinary people in the lower realm. Noah suddenly fell silent. However, before the ancient wind godly spirit could rejoice, Noah sighed and said indifferently, "Don't worry. As expected, I should not have any expectations of you so-called gods." In one sentence, Noah had made up his mind. The ancient wind god's face darkened, and his eyes became cold. How stupid. Stupid? Noah laughed as if he had heard something funny, but there was no trace of a smile in his eyes. I should be the one to say that. After saying that, Noah walked forward step by step. You actually came here to die without knowing anything. What a fool. As these words rang out, a burst of starlight appeared on Noah's body. Chapter 1562. Clang. A dazzling burst of starlight flashed from Noah's body. The starlight was like stars that surrounded Noah but did not illuminate the surroundings like ordinary lights. Noah seemed to be carrying a sky full of stars. His body was shining with starlight as he walked forward step by step. Black Rabbit and the others were puzzled when they saw the starlight shining from Noah's body. What is that? Among the tens of thousands of gods, aside from the rest of the gods, the leaders of the strongest species were all shocked. As one of the three strongest tribes, the natural gods, with their extraordinary experience, read the true form of the starlight shining from Noah's body. Is that? No way. How could a human have such a thing? The ancient wind god's face was also filled with shock. Immediately after, an extremely strong sense of foreboding surged in his heart. Under the shroud of the foreboding, the ancient wind god's expression changed abruptly and he shouted. This is bad. Let's retreat quickly. Retreat? Noah raised his head abruptly and looked in the direction of the group of strongest species. It's too late. After saying that, Noah stretched out his hands as if he was going to hug something and put his palms in front of him. The starlight shining from Noah's body suddenly surged into Noah's hands and gathered in front of Noah's palms, forming a star atlas. At first glance, it looked as if Noah had wrapped the entire universe in his palms, causing the dazzling starlight to bloom from within. Seeing this scene, many gods finally gradually recognized the true form of the star map, and their faces were filled with horror. No, how could this be? No, impossible. As for the group of strongest breed-born deities, they all had an ominous premonition. Without any hesitation, they immediately turned around and fled. Unfortunately, a voice rang out before they could escape. Activate the virtual star Tice Way. Let the stars of the universe rotate. Simulate the star atlas, another cosmology. The star chart that had gathered in Noah's hands suddenly flickered, turning into a tide of starlight that surged out in all directions at an astonishing speed. It enveloped everyone in the surroundings in an instant. Wherever the dazzling starlight passed, everyone present, whether it was the gods and Buddhas in the sky or the communities in the ancient castle, was shocked to find that their star Taisue's star atlas had changed. The spirit lattice in his body was dropping at an astonishing speed in an instant. My spiritual lattices. How could this be? My spiritual lattices are dropping. It was not only the others. Even Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, Letitia, Pest, Sarah, Shadora and the others were shocked to discover that their spirit levels were decreasing at an astonishing speed. It continued until only half of their spirit levels remained. Among the people present, only Noah and the strongest tribes who were planning to escape did not have their spiritual lattices reduced by half. However, Noah aside, although the natural gods did not have their spiritual lattices reduced by half, they were all unable to move. This was because the dazzling starlight that surged toward the strongest tribes began to spin and gradually gathered into stars made of dazzling starlight that enveloped the strongest tribes. Virtual star Taisui. One of the strongest tribes cried out in despair. This is the virtual star Taisui. This sentence caused the strongest tribes to show a look of despair on their faces. Virtual star Taisui. It was the simulate the star atlas, another cosmology, that could overcome all the differences in strength and seal the two strongest tribes, the deities and the astrals. When used on targets other than the deities and the astrals who were not the strongest tribes, it could only reduce their spiritual lattices by half. However, if it was used on the gods, who were the strongest species, it would be able to ignore their powers and seal them all into a fictional world. Now, these deities who were in the top 3 digits of the strongest tribes were all gradually being sealed. Without Noah's permission, these deities would probably never have the chance to see the light of day again. Why? The ancient wind deity roared crazily. Why does a human have to simulate the star atlas, another cosmology? Do you want to know? Noah's lips curled into a cold arc. Wait until you are in my prison. You will have plenty of time to think about it. After saying this, Noah suddenly clasped his hands in front of him. The star atlas that was heavily clasped in Noah's hands suddenly burst into a burst of astonishing starlight. It was like a pillar of light that soared into the sky and went straight into the clouds. Then, the deities who were enveloped by the starlight were all carried by the star atlas and flew in the direction of the pillar of light that soared into the sky. No! Following a series of neat cries, the deities who were born were all carried by the star atlas into the pillar of light that soared into the sky and disappeared. The only deities who were left behind were those who were not born, but were acquired. The gods and Buddhas in the sky could only watch helplessly as the strongest species leading the various god groups were all sealed one by one. Their faces turned ghastly pale in an instant. As for Black Rabbit and the others, they looked at Noah, who seemed to have captured the pillar of light that soared into the sky and the earth and sealed the deities one by one. The light in their eyes was all replaced by shock. However, what shocked Black Rabbit and the others even more was yet to come. Noah, who had captured the pillar of light that soared into the sky and the earth, looked around, and his dark and deep eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness. Since you are here, then all of you shall stay here. A burst of extremely terrifying divine power rose from Noah's body. In the depths of Noah's heart, on the stone plate that was connected to the outline of 10 patterns, 3 patterns lit up one after another. One was Phoenix. One was Thunder. The other was Priest. In this instant, Noah used 3 avatars at the same time. Beep, beep, beep. Accompanied by a burst of thunder and lightning, a burst of bright lightning rose from Noah's body and swept out. Because he used Phoenix at the same time, the violent lightning that swept out in all directions all carried a lightning speed, and in a form that could not be seen by the naked eye, it shot out in all directions indiscriminately. Although the deities and Buddhas present in the sky were not sealed, because of the power of illusory star Tai Sui, their spiritual lattices were all reduced by half, and their powerful strength that was enough to reach 4 digits suddenly dropped to 5 digits. Under such circumstances, the deities and Buddhas in the sky did not even have time to react before they were suddenly hit by the lightning that shot out at lightning speed. With a bang, their bodies were covered by the violent lightning. Ah 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 ah. Screams rang out from the deities and Buddhas' mouths one after another. However, the deities and Buddhas in the sky did not notice. Mysterious runes were reflected on the lightning bolts that were crazily attacking their bodies. In the next second, the deities and Buddhas in the sky were all covered by the lightning that was covered with runes, and their strength and movements were all restricted, and they were completely unable to move. In the face of the deities and Buddhas that were covered by violent lightning, Noah only shouted softly, "Seal!" Therefore, in the lightning that was moving on the deities and Buddhas' bodies, mysterious runes flashed one after another. Then, the deities and Buddhas were carried by the lightning that was covering their bodies, and their bodies involuntarily flew in the direction of the pillar of light that was soaring into the sky. They were submerged in it, and followed in the footsteps of the strongest species. The terrifying divine power that was rising from Noah's body slowly converged. The pillar of light that was soaring into the sky also slowly shrank, and finally shrank into Noah's closed palm, and together with the shining star atlas, it slowly disappeared. Henceforth, the many deities from the heaven realm were all sealed by Noah. Looking at the figure standing in the wind, Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, Letitia, Pest, Sarah, Shadora, and the various communities in the ancient castle were all stunned. They were unable to recover from their shock for a long time. Chapter 1563. I'm sorry. In the main hall of the throne hall, Noah apologized to his companions. Undoubtedly, the target of those gods was only me, but you all have to suffer with me. I'm really sorry. Hearing this, the group of people who followed Noah back to the throne hall looked at each other in dismay. Then, they all laughed bitterly. You're too polite, Mr. Noah. Sarah shook her head. Although it's said to be suffering, in fact, we didn't suffer any damage. If there is any impact, it's probably only that we have a new understanding of how powerful Mr. Noah is. Yes. Shadora nodded very seriously. It's not until today that we know how powerful Mr. Noah is. Before, we only knew that you could fight Az Dakaha head-on. Now, it seems that this evaluation may be too low, but there is absolutely no possibility of it being too high. The existence of the final trial of humans was the oldest demon king with the characteristics of a god slayer. These existences were all the natural enemies of the gods. As a three-digit demon king, Az Dakaha defeated more than 1,000,000 gods with the help of the simulated star atlas, another cosmology. Today, Noah, a human, also relied on another cosmology and his own strength to seal all the millions of gods. It was believed that after today, the name Noah Doria would become a legend that would not be inferior to the final trial of humans. After all, the scene of Noah activating another cosmology and sealing all the millions of gods was not only seen by the group of people here, but also by the members of the community in the vampire's castle. Perhaps, from today onwards, Noah would be famous even if he didn't want to. I didn't expect that, in addition to more than half of the sun's sovereignty, Mr. Noah also has another cosmology. Ren seemed to have a whole new level of respect for Noah. Although I knew that Mr. Noah's achievement must be extraordinary, I didn't expect it to be extraordinary to this extent. It's really shocking. This statement is a little too exaggerated. Noah could not help but laugh out loud. Although another cosmology is a gift that is more than 3 digits above the box court, it was only a coincidence that I was able to get it. I'm just like a nouveau riche. Why should I be so surprised? However, this statement was immediately refuted by Letitia. Master, there is something wrong with your statement. Letitia said very abruptly. Everyone is not surprised that you have another cosmology, but the fact that you can use another cosmology. The fact that I can use another cosmology, ? Noah was slightly startled. Yes. Black Rabbit shook a pair of rabbit ears and explained with some excitement. Since Mr. Noah has another cosmology, then you should know that the so-called another cosmology actually refers to another cosmology, right? Noah certainly knew this kind of thing. Therefore, Noah nodded without any surprise. Then, Mr. Noah should also know that people who have another cosmology often have the ability to become the center of a group of gods, right? Black Rabbit explained. In the box court, although another cosmology is a very precious and powerful gift, it is superior to the gifts of more than 3 digits in the box court, and it also represents the ability of the holder to become the center of a group of gods. How can anyone use it? That's right. Sarah nodded. Those who can have another cosmology are only recognized existences. If Mr. Noah himself does not have the ability to become the center of a group of gods, then he can't use another cosmology at all. It was because of this that many gods from the upper level of the box did not expect that Noah would suddenly use another cosmology, and those strongest gods who were born as gods would be so shocked by this matter. Those who could use another cosmology were only existences who had the ability to become the center of a group of gods. In view of this, those gods who were high above did not expect that a human being would have such an ability to hold another cosmology. As a result, those guys were all sealed by Noah's another cosmology and could not see the sun outside. So that's how it is. Flying Bird seemed to understand why everyone was so surprised until now. No wonder you guys are making such a fuss. A gift that is more than 3 digits above the box? Yao said somewhat naively. Doesn't that mean that from now on, Noah is invincible? This statement almost caused everyone to stumble. Aren't you thinking too much? Noah said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It's not like I'm the only one who holds the another cosmology, Lucian said with a smile. Moreover, although Master's another cosmology is very powerful, it also has a lot of limitations. Letitia analyzed. In the face of gods and stars who are the strongest species, it is an absolutely invincible existence. In the face of others, it can only exert the effect of having the spiritual lattice, which is not so useful. Is that so? Black Rabbit said with some surprise. Even if it can only have the spiritual lattice, the effect is still amazing, right? For those who rely on spiritual lattice, it can naturally exert a powerful effect, but for those who don't need to rely on spiritual lattice, it's not necessarily so. Sarah reminded. For example, Mr. 16 Knights, I can't sense a powerful spiritual lattice from him, but his combat power is very amazing, enough to rival four-digit existences. That's true. Yao nodded. On the contrary, for Flying Bird, who has a type of divine lattice that can maximize the output of spiritual lattice, that, another cosmology, is a natural nemesis. Heroi-san. Flying Bird stared at Yao. Are you mocking me for relying too much on spiritual lattice? Haruhibu Yaichi blinked his eyes in confusion. I'm just giving an example, I'm not referring to you. Everyone suddenly chuckled. However, it's really surprising that the ancestors, another cosmology, is in the hands of Noah-san. Shadora looked at Noah with some emotion. That another cosmology, called the illusory star Taisui, seems to be the possession of the Starseed Dragon King who created Salamandra, right? Yes, in the battle to seal Azir Dakaha 200 years ago, your father used it on the seal, and because the seal was destroyed, it fell into my hands. Noah spread his hands. Do you want me to return it to its original owner? No. Shadora shook her head, but a steady smile appeared on her cute face. I plan to give this, another cosmology, to Noah-san. Give it to me? Noah was surprised. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.